Good morning. Welcome to the February 4th California Collaborative for Educational Excellence Board meeting. I'd like to note that we have a quorum. I'll do a roll call vote to establish that quorum, and then we'll get started. Board Member Monroe.
Present.
Board Member Lyon.
Here.
Board Member Sabranti. I think. Board Member Sabranti is here.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with that. Here, yes, sorry.
We knew you were there. Board Member Gregson.
2021.
Here. I'm here.
No kidding. 2021. Well, welcome. Thank you, board members. We've got quite a day ahead of us, so we'll just jump right into it and get started. And our Vice Chair, Board Member Sabranti, do you mind leading us in the flag salute?
Happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. A couple of general announcements and housekeeping. Letters from the public on matters before the board are aggregated and filed in the electronic folder and sent to the board by staff. No letters were received at this time. We appreciate the public's cooperation in emailing all meeting related correspondence and public comments to the CCEE at the CCEE at ccee-ca.org by 7 a.m. today, immediately preceding the board meeting. Public comments that were received will be read aloud prior to the board action or following discussion of the agenda item to which the comment corresponds, or under agenda item 10 for the general public comment, if any. The public can also provide public comment live during today's proceedings by either calling the call-in number displayed or by submitting the public comment form via the short URL displayed on the current slide. Public comment guidelines can be found on today's board agenda, which can be accessed at the CCEE website, ccee-ca.org/meetings. A couple of reminders to all speakers and members of the audience to introduce yourselves and identify who you are prior to speaking. And a reminder to board members to unmute your microphones when speaking and unmute them when not speaking. And mute them when you're not speaking. It is also important that the board members speak clearly into the microphones so your comments can be properly recorded as part of the proceedings. And we do have, this is board member Sandra Lyon's last meeting with us. Sandra, we will save our comments for the end, but just recognizing the importance of this day with our other board members and with those audience members. And board members, we do have a long day, as you probably noticed. You look at the agenda. Feel free to take your breaks as needed. We have targeted moments for breaks, but they may not be enough. So just feel free to do what you need to do as we move along the day. And that'll take us to item 1, approval of the minutes from the December 3rd, 2020 regular board meeting. This is discussion and action item. So board members, any discussion related to the minutes of December 3rd?
I'll move that we approve as presented.
Okay. Is there any public comment related to this item?
Second.
Okay, see no public comment. No further discussion from the board. I'll take a motion from Lyon and a second from Sabranti. And we'll do a roll call vote. Board Member Monroe.
Aye.
Board Member Lyon.
Aye.
Yep. Board Member Sabranti.
Aye.
And Board Member Gregson.
Aye.
Item moves, and we'll proceed to item 2. This will be presented by counsel to the board, James Baca. This is discussion and action, and this is the subject of electing our board chair and vice chair for elections.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Executive Director Armelina. Article 4, Section 2 of the board bylaws requires that the board chair and vice chair be elected annually from amongst the members of the governing board at the first regular meeting of each calendar year. Last year was a bit different. The board election was held in December upon the departure of the former chair, Sue Burr. and the election was consolidated with the February meeting and election, as the new chair and vice chair served the remainder of 2019 and 2020. The election process is as follows. The election commences with the current chair asking board members to nominate individuals for the office of chair. If the current chair is nominated and Chair Navo is eligible for nomination and re-election, the chair shall ask for a second. After all nominations are accepted at the board, the chair shall take a roll call. If the current chair is nominated, the current vice chair will preside over the election. After the roll call, the newly elected board chair shall then ask members to nominate individuals for the office of vice chair, and any nomination must be seconded. After all those nominations are seconded, the chair shall take a roll call again. No member may nominate or second a nomination for him or herself. 3 votes are necessary to elect an officer, and after which the officer shall assume the office for 1 year or until a successor is elected. No board member may serve simultaneously as both the chair and the vice chair. If in the governing board's judgment, no nominee for the office of vice chair, or vice chair can garner sufficient votes for the election, a motion to put the election over is in order. So at this time, I turn it over to the chair to ask for nominations for the chair for the succeeding year.
So Jim, just a quick question.
Sure.
Do we want to go through the discussion public comment prior to, or do you just want, are we just moving to motion for the chair?
I think it probably would be a good idea to take public comment now, if there is any public comment.
Okay.
Can move quickly through the election.
Okay. Leanne, are there any public comments related to this item?
No, we have not received any public comments. I'm checking to see if we have any callers real fast.
Okay. Any discussion from the board? Okay, I'd take a motion for chair.
Yes, I think we take nominations.
A
I'd like
nomination.
to make a nomination for Matt Navo to serve an additional term as chair.
I'll second that motion or nomination.
The gavel will now be turned over to Mr. Sobrante to ask for a roll call unless there are other nominations.
Okay, so Matt Navo has been nominated. Are there any other nominations from the board? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready for a roll call. And I guess I do the roll call. Board Member Gregson.
Aye.
Board Member Monroe.
Aye.
Board Member Lyon.
Aye.
Board Member Navo.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So that passes unanimously.
Board member Navo's vote for himself can be counted. He cannot nominate or second himself. So the vote was 5-0.
Okay.
And then the gavel turns back to Board Chair Navo for nomination for vice chair.
Okay. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Tim Sobrante to continue in his role as vice chair.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Board Member Lyon and a second from Board Member Monroe. Are there any further nominations? Okay. No further nominations. We'll take a roll call vote for Board Member Sobrante to be the vice chair for the CCEE. Board Member Gregson.
Aye.
Board Member Lyon.
Aye.
Board Member Monroe.
Aye.
And Board Member Sobrante.
Aye.
Motion moves 5-0 for Board Member Sobrante to be vice chair. Jim, is there anything else?
Nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim. That moves item 1 and 2, and that takes us to item 3, Executive Director's Report. And Tom, I'm just going to move diligently because of the length of the day here. This is information and action, and I will turn it over to you.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Information and discussion, Tom.
Yes, thank you. Well, good morning and congratulations, Board President Navo and Vice President Sabrante. It appears it's a sentence for you folks. I'm looking forward to. So I appreciate both your leadership too. It's really a pleasure to work with you. I appreciate all your support of myself and the team. I always want to take an opportunity as I start to thank our team. I want to thank Leanne in particular for her hard work, always continuing to get the board all the information ready, and we continue to do this virtually too, and she does that really well. So thank you, Leanne, appreciate that. And the staff is amazing, continuing to work really hard. I hope you'll see some of that evidence today. And we have some new staff members too that we're excited that we'll get to introduce. So you'll see that we'll do that during the mid-year report. So basically I have 2 items this morning. One will be a little bit lengthy, I think, the mid-year report in particular. And so we'll have an opportunity to kind of review the goals that the board, we brought to the board back in June. We see the mid-year report as kind of an opportunity to kind of take stock as to where we're at and to really be able to determine, are we moving in the right direction, and get feedback as well. And then the second item too that we'll have Deputy Executive Director Suji Shin will present is a little bit of just an update on what's happening with this reopening dashboard and the CDPH health order. And so we'll share a little bit about what that process has looked like, and really our role specifically really of working with county offices and in support of LEAs registering and just submitting that data. That's really just been our specific role too. So appreciate that opportunity to do that. And with that, I think we can pull up the presentation for the mid-year report. Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. So these are the 4 goals, and I know the board is familiar with these. We continue to keep these in front of us. I know in our board updates and in particular. So the 4 goals, the first goal is supporting our LEAs currently receiving direct technical assistance, and to address the expansion of this support to other LEAs in need too. So Carla Estrada will be speaking to that this morning, and I'm excited to kind of share. Made a lot of progress in regards to, in particular, around our progress monitoring and as we're getting ready to complete our 5th and our 6th SIR, Systemic Instructional Review, we'll hear a little bit about that. The second goal is really some of the work that we know and the board is familiar with, where we shifted in the spring, particularly around professional learning resources. And so we want to be able to share those with you as well. The third goal is always in front of us, and we presented every board meeting around the system of support. And so Ronnie will be sharing a little bit about what's happening with the system of support. And then the last piece is specifically around making sure that we're continuing to share lessons learned, kind of some of the best practices from the field too. And so Suji and Michelle will share a little bit of that as well. Next slide, please. Okay, and I'll turn this to Deputy Executive Carla Estrada.
Good morning, board members. Thank you, Tom. So as an update on our direct technical assistance, as a reminder, our goals are very much focused on the ongoing engagement, communication, and progress monitoring. Later this morning, I'll be sharing more details about where we are in this process. As you know, we've been in this work of providing direct technical assistance as defined by legislation. We've been at it for now about 2 years. And so we've definitely been designing, implementing, and also engaging in continuous improvement to make sure that we continue to get better in serving our LEAs, but also making sure that we're making the impact and meeting the goals that we've determined. We've also been really focused on completing the systemic reviews. We've been very excited to be able to work with our districts as we continue to determine where are the areas of instruction, in particular around particular student needs that were identified through the dashboard. And so we are at a place where we've completed many of them, and we'll continue to complete a couple more as we move forward, but we will give you an update in a second about that. And then expanding that access of DTA resources. We're calling it the do-it-yourself. We're going to have to come up with something better, I'm sure, but what are some do-it-yourself resources that we can share with others based on what we've learned in this process of really digging deep in instruction within our most highest need districts that we could share with the field. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rocio Gonzalez Fresto, who is our senior manager, who will share a little bit more. Next slide.
Good morning, board members. Thank you for having us this morning. I'm excited to see you all today, this Thursday morning. So as Carla just mentioned, we have been working on our systemic instructional reviews. From the table that you see being projected, you'll see that we have completed 2 out of the 4 systemic instructional reviews that we received last December 2019 from the California School Dashboard Release. The Oakland report actually was just completed last Friday. It has just been released, and Mount Diablo is due to be completed towards the end of March, beginning of April. You can access our SIR reports along with their executive summaries at our CCEE website, so you can go ahead and click on that link to check them out. We do send a survey to our LEAs and their county offices once the SIR has been completed to gather some feedback on the overall process and how things went for their team. So again, you can go ahead and check out that information for the SIR reports and their executive summaries at our CCEE website. Next slide, please. Speaking of our CCEE website, we have done some updates to it for our DTA and our systemic instructional review. I do want to take a moment and give a huge shout out to one of our program specialists, Dorcas Kong, who has been instrumental in helping us get all of our materials updated so that our various stakeholders and members can go onto our CCEE website and see our updated information. So you'll see a few new items such as under our direct technical assistance, how we provide DTA support, our pathways, our various modes of engagement. You'll see one of our interactive items that is being played right now, which are instructional components for our systemic instructional review. And as you see, you can click through, it gives you a description of the component, some data gathering methods, along with some sample artifacts. So all those are live now on our CCEE website, found under either the Direct Technical Support tab or our Systemic Instructional Review. So I will encourage you all to take a look at the information that we have there available for you all to view. And I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Carla. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Rocio, and I thank her. She has been, since the inception of our work, Rocio has worked very hard to be able to listen carefully, do the research, and be able to design something that continues to just be adapted based on the needs of what we're seeing with our districts, and we appreciate her leadership in doing that. So one of the key areas of focus for us this year, last year it was very much focused on developing the SIR process and implementing it. This year has been very focused on, once the SIR has been completed, what should we do to ensure that communication and transparency improves, including with the systemic instructional review. And so we continue to get that feedback. Progress monitoring also was really important to us. I think this year with the dashboard being suspended, it's one of those things that we are thinking critically of ways in which we can do that. And I'll be sharing that with you a bit today and appreciate the feedback. And then of course, our ongoing support. Ongoing support is based on the SIR results. So what those recommendations are and how we use our resources, our Rolodex of partners, including how we leverage folks like the CD and the county office and what they've been doing with the districts, and that we be very focused and collaborative together in that process. So we've been very excited to be able to continue to do that. But again, I think the important piece through all of this is engaging in continuous improvement, because we know we ourselves need to keep adapting to the changing needs of our districts. Next slide, please. Now, I think it's important to highlight some new staff members who are helping us grow this work as we continue to scale up and expand. I'd love to introduce David Toston, who previously was with El Dorado County Office of Education, has extensive experience in special education, as well as really growing in the work related to equity-related issues. And so we're excited to be able to have him be a part of our work. And he will be working across the system and primarily around around direct technical assistance. It will be the do-it-yourself resources, thinking about if we were to be able to offer our type of support with other districts in collaboration with counties, what would that look like? So he's going to help us explore and consider that more deeply, as well as working in the professional learning work. We know we learn a lot from this process. And so what could we be able to work in partnership with Suji and Michelle and Ronnie and the team in those areas? So we're excited to have him be able to sit in that role with us. Next slide, please. We also have a new senior manager, Jenny Wright. She's also extensive experience of instruction. So if you ever are looking to go deeper into instructional quality, she's a great partner to be able to talk more about his extensive experience doing that, both as a principal and as assistant principal, and also in supporting districts in other capacities. So we're excited to be able to have her. She works directly right now with Mount Diablo Unified School District. That's her first SIR, and she has just jumped in and learned the processes, try to stay within the fidelity of it, but also helping inform how we can continue to improve the process to meet Mount Diablo's needs. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we did not get to introduce when these folks were on board, so I just wanted you to be aware of Francesca. She is one of our new program specialists. She is working behind the scenes. She makes sure that things are coordinated, organized, make sure that we follow up on any kind of actions out of the SIR process. And so you may have not met her. She joined us last year in, I believe, in November. And so we wanted to make sure you got a chance to meet her. Next slide. As well as our administrative assistant, Nicole, who is also working in directly coordinating with our directors as well as senior managers on any kind of coordination of support regarding direct technical assistance. But the beauty of our team, as you always know, we work across the system. And so she is also here to be a resource to anyone within the organization that will need it around administrative assistance support. And we're very excited to have them on the team. And with that, I will hand it over to Suji.
And before we move forward, Board Member Navo, I thought maybe we should give the board a chance to ask questions or maybe do it as we go. That way you don't have to remember and write that note down. So if any feedback or any specific questions around the DTA work.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Tom. I think that's helpful. Any questions from board members? Clarifying questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Yep, Board Member.
I have the unique position of both being a board member and being able to participate in the process with Oakland. So I can offer a testimonial of how the process is going. And it's been a really rich and in-depth process. And one of the things that I'm most impressed by is the team's commitment to, while challenging the district, this is Oakland Unified, while challenging the district to, set aspirational goals and to work diligently to change the outcomes they're having for their least served students. There's also a commitment to not piling on extra deliverables, looking at what's already gone before and working with the many other touch points that there are in Oakland Unified, including with my office on the fiscal side. So I have really valued the process and will look forward to being able to work together to, synthesize our feedback to the district so it's really useful to them and that they can work on these goals for many years to come. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Superintendent Monroe. And you'll see that in the progress monitoring, this is the beauty of this work. By engaging in continuous improvement, we learn from our county partners as well, where we could be better. And so you'll see some of that in our progress monitoring. So we thank you for your partnership and collaboration. Thank you for the feedback.
Any other, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Navo. As you know, we had a really great example very, very recently of how the SIR has been able to align with support at CDE to a specific school district and really looking at taking the information that has been learned from the SIR to how we are monitoring and our approach with the school district and support. So we're completely aligning those elements. And I know that we'll be able to continue doing that with the other school districts who have participated with the SIR. So very much looking forward to seeing how this aligns with the processes around CDE and being able to utilize CCEE and diving into those very specific elements, because it really does show the relationship between with CDE, CCEE, and the school district and how we all can work together in that space. So it was very recent, so it was just a great example. So thank you, Carla. I know you had a great conversation with Heather yesterday, and so thank you for that. But there's a ton of opportunity around coherence in this work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, board member.
And I'll just echo what both of my board member colleagues have said, and actually what Carla said, which is I'm really impressed to see how much this process has grown and the continuous improvement piece that you're applying to your own work, because this is really deep, and just kudos to staff for really being able to go in and in a very short period of time truly understand, identify, and work with staff to develop, as board member Monroe said, the things that are already happening and work on and further those goals, rather than come in from outside and sort of slap on new aspirational goals that may or may not be relevant to that community in that context. And so appreciate the coherence, the alignment, and the depth and level of care that CCEE staff is taking in doing this work.
Yeah, and I'll just add to all that. I echo everything that was said. I do like the 12 categories, kind of the 12 buckets, I think that are easy and coherent. And by posting the executive summaries online, well, the full report as well, but the executive summaries in particular, you can, obviously there's some differences between needs and different LEAs as can be expected, but you could also see some common themes emerge as it relates to improvement. So as we post more and more of these SIRs, I think that's just going to help inform the field even more and help inform future SIRs. So just want to commend everyone involved.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Tom, for allowing us to weigh in instead of going to the end. I think that was very helpful. And Carla, thank you for all your hard work. And again, thank you for welcome to our new members of the CCE, David, Jenny, Francesca, and Nicole. Welcome aboard, and we look forward to hearing more about your work. And so, Tom, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And then Suji, I think, is going to take this next item.
Morning, board. So our second goal was around professional learning. And in this year, we really focused on developing more robust processes for identifying and developing and sharing out professional learning resources to the field around high priority topic areas. And so you see underneath that three sort of main areas of focus for us have been first around identifying best practices, lessons learned, both from ourselves as well as the field, and identifying how best to share those lessons learned, make them applicable, and share them more widely across the state. Second, around defining or developing more robust communication and engagement strategies in order to increase accessibility and the actual use of our resources, as well as measuring more completely our quality, relevance, usability, and focusing on the kind of impact that our resources, tools, and professional learning sessions have on the field. And then third, in response to everything happening across the state and the world, I'm really thinking about how do we build partnerships and networks to really focus on the high priority, high leverage kind of needs that our schools and districts are facing right now during COVID-19. So with that, next slide, please. Some quick tools and resources to just very briefly remind you of as we kind of provide our mid-year report. Earlier on in the year, we launched our continuity of learning playbook. So click on that very briefly. These were resources to support our LEAs as they really transitioned into responding to the pandemic and with the closure of schools focusing on how we supported distance and hybrid learning, some of the tools, resources, quick best strategies in order to very quickly make that transition, along with that health and safety guidebook that we focused on to provide some additional guidance and support to make meaning of all the various health and safety guidances that were coming through for schools and districts. So back to the slide. Then we also had our Learning Acceleration series, and with that, we partnered with TNTP to really focus on an 8-session series that supported our instructional teams. And in this work, we partnered with our DTA districts to really go in deep, creating instructional teams made up of the district and county offices to really delve in deep into this work of developing and implementing a learning acceleration plan to really target student outcomes over the course of an 8-week period, with ongoing coaching, mentoring, and continuous improvement cycles embedded within that. We'll share more about sort of how we're using some of the lessons learned through that process and how we're taking that now into our next step with building out and making these resources and learnings more accessible and readily available for others outside of our DTA network. Back to that slide. We also then partnered with from our county offices, creating a distance learning consortium to really focus on developing resources that address what we call the quote unquote hot topics, things that have been floated up through our districts and county offices around distance and blended learning that our districts and schools were struggling with most, and how we would create partnering with, Kern, San Diego, Orange, and San Bernardino county offices of education to really delve in deeper into some of these very specific tools, resources, guidance around distance and blended learning best practices, supporting multi-tier social-emotional learning within the school and district community in that blended and distance learning context, really focusing and delving into how we support historically marginalized populations and vulnerable student groups in that distance and blended learning space, as well as focusing on how we really leverage family engagement and empower families and parents to really engage in that student success process, again, through this lens of what it looks like to do this in through that distance and blended learning instructional modes. Again, these tools, the tools that have come out of these partnerships are ones that we are now moving into our next phase of really thinking of how do we partner more widely, how do we disseminate more widely, and how do we engage in more conversation and development to expand our reach in those areas. Next slide. We also developed and are continuing to expand upon our field guide for accelerating learning, equity, and well-being. So following the continuity of learning playbooks, which, as you remember, we launched in the summer of last year, really focusing on supports for LEAs as they made that quick transition into the distance and blended learning space. We came back with feedback from those sessions and tools and resources and our lessons learned from that process, and working with our district and county office partners to come back with the Copernicus Solutions team who helped us build out that work to now expand upon what we're calling a field guide, which really focuses on less around a playbook, but more around tools, guidances, and best practices that we are pulling from the field. How do we really share the lessons learned and the best practices from our leaders and share that more widely with the field? How do we take what exists out there, some of our best tools across the state that our district and county office teams are using, and share that a little bit more widely across the state, making that more robust, making that more agnostic to a local context. As you see there, we've anchored this around some key kind of areas of focus, health and safety considerations, seamless communications, developing flexible schedules to maximize safety, focusing on accelerating learning, committing to equity, prioritizing well-being, and then what it looks like for leadership teams how we focus on supporting all staff through professional learning support, redefining what success for students looks like now in this new instructional space that we all find ourselves in. We've now launching these kind of the new buttons, focusing on adapting and reimagining learning through the very varied instructional modes that our schools and district teams are now really using and thinking about applying as we continue to head into 2021. Thinking about how we now truly strengthen and leverage the family-school relationship, how we empower our families to be more engaged and to be more involved in the relationship, and how schools and district teams can utilize the strength of our families to support student learning. And then of course, this final one around leveraging technology. As we find ourselves now a year into this learning space, how do we take stock of how we've used technology in the past to support student learning? How do we really rethink technology as a tool across the system, not just in the classroom, but throughout the school and district setting, to really think about what learning looks like, what measurement looks like, what school student support looks like. And so we have continued to build out our field guides and use this as a launching pad for our next initiative. So go back to that slide. From here, I think I want to pause a moment. I've kind of whipped through a lot of resources that we have been focused on developing over the course of the past 8 months or so. And I think you can see there a progression of the way that we built them out. The continuity of learning playbooks, again, really focus on supporting district teams as they make that switch into the online and virtual learning space. We focus on the learning acceleration series to really think about what does a deep dive scaffolded support look like for school district teams as they really engage in the development and implementation of a plan to support learning acceleration and understanding the fact that our students are coming with different needs, and we're now in a different space. The virtual classroom is a very different space than our kind of in-person classroom was. And how do we maximize that and take that into account as we really focus on providing the individual student support to truly accelerate learning for all of our students, especially those who student groups that are vulnerable, that are coming with additional obstacles that we need to help overcome. Then the hot topics really then focused on how do we get into the kind of key areas of focus that we're seeing across the state in terms of need to support technology, pedagogy, and supporting students learning in this space. And using that then to develop this, what we call more comprehensive field guide. How do we take all the lessons learned, package them into ways that school and district teams can really access and use, whether it's around getting a tool for communication support, getting some best strategies for engaging parents around decision making, thinking more deeply about what staff professional learning will look like, again, in this virtual space. With that, we are really excited, and I won't go into this too deeply here because we have a separate item for it, but we are launching Leading Forward, and I think just maybe next slide, we'll need to the link on this. Go to the next slide. We are launching Leading Forward 2021, which we are calling, a self-paced education series. So how do we create a broader platform for bringing folks in and engaging with the tools, the resources, the lessons learned that we have, but we know our colleagues across the state have, and how can we best share that to really support students, schools, district teams around these kind of 5 strand areas. And again, I'll go into this a little bit deeper later, but these questions around how do we ensure that students are thriving, not just academically, but socio-emotionally? How do we support measurement of student needs and outcomes in this new format? What does now instruction in 2021 look like in this virtual hybrid continued interrupted learning space? What does it really mean to be a systems-driven leader? How do we ensure that when we say, it's a whole child, we're taking holistic systems to account? We're talking about the school systems as well, programs, staff, funding, to really think about a holistic system to support student outcomes. And as you see, they're all centered around this key strand for us, which is how do we ensure that we still maintain this focus on advancing equity for our students in schools, especially our historically underserved and our vulnerable student groups during this ongoing crisis. Next slide. So with that, I'm also really excited to introduce a couple new staff members that we have joining our team. We have an Assistant Director, Dr. James McKenna, who's coming on as our Assistant Director of Professional Learning and Research Development. He comes to us from our friends and colleagues at LACO, where he was a coordinator of inclusive design, and he is an expert in UDL. It will be supporting the development and measurement of our professional learning resources and platforms. He is definitely originally from Boston, and when you hear him speak, that is very, very clear. We're excited to have him on board. And as Carla said, all of our staff with such a small team obviously sit and support both the direct technical assistance work as well as the professional learning, the research, communications work as well. And he is down in Los Angeles, and we'll be working out of the Los Angeles office once we're open. Next slide. I'm also pleased to introduce a new program specialist that we have on board, Sarish Anjum. She comes in, she will be looking at the Sacramento office. Prior to joining CCEE, which she did in the winter, she worked in higher education at Cal State East Bay. She was also at Contra Costa County Office of Education, focusing on some of the operations and administrative support there. She will continue in that vein, supporting some of our business operations, communications, and of course, just kind of being an all-around hitter, as we all are to some extent on the CCEE team. So it's my thrill to have them join the team. And with that, I'll pause a moment and take any questions or comments before I hand it over to Lonnie for the system of support.
Thank you, Suji. There's a lot there. That has a lot of rich resources. I'll turn it over to the board. If there's any comments, questions for Suji.
I do. First, I just want to say amazing. It's great to see the breadth and the depth of the work and the resources continue to expand. I'm particularly excited about the leading forward. I do have some thoughts on that. I had a couple of quick questions though. First, so there's a lot of amazing resources, and obviously we have no way to categorize everybody who just clicks on a link on a website and looks, and we don't necessarily know who's adopting what, but do we have any sense of potential case studies where there's LEAs or, specific schools that are adopting something off of our site? And do we have a mechanism to track that? Because I think that would be helpful. The resources are amazing. I know actually my own district's talked about adopting elements of certain aspects of different playbooks, and I had no idea about that till just this week. But do we have a way to track that, or any specific case studies that we can point to?
We haven't been tracking that information widely. What we have been trying to do, and we'll get that into a little bit more in goal 4 actually, is trying to be a little bit more robust and consistent about taking survey measures across every single session, across all the resources that we're putting in. We do have a couple of cases where what we've tried to do is really bring in teams to actually engage. So putting in a little bit of a, not a gate, but sort of, I think encouraging teams to come in together. So for example, the Learning Acceleration Series was one where we did kind of open it up to any of our direct technical assistance members that are districts and county offices, but really encourage them to come in teams of at least 8, right? When you had the county office, a team from the county office, a team from the district, really working together so that you could get that full sort of team effort, and you could really focus on some of the measurement of how it was being used, and where they were taking it back to. That said, that is an area for us to continue to grow in, and a place where we're trying to figure out just even logistically how we can best track that.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of both and, because you want it out there for broad dissemination and people are going to pick what they need, and we want that to occur. But if we do have some concrete case studies where we know this particular school or this district is adopting this playbook, and we can really monitor or track, I think that would be really helpful. And then one last thing on leading forward, I know we already have our focus areas for this year, but one thought, there's so much interest in college and career readiness, and particularly CTE and career pathways, and maybe something as we think about building out best practices and some of these workshops for the future, listening to incoming Ed Secretary Cardona and his talks, and talking about community college articulation, talking about pathways. There's a lot more interest on that in the field, particularly in recent years, and just maybe something I think where CCE can play a leadership role in that space if we choose to. We haven't done a lot in that yet, but I think there's a real opportunity for us if we choose to lead it in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sprante. Any other comments? See none. Suji, that was a tremendous work that you and your team have done in this area to provide such a breadth of resources for the field. Just want to commend you and also welcome James and Suresh to the team, and looking forward to the work that they're doing as well. So thank you for all of that. It's a heavy lift. Oh, Board Member Lyon.
I'm trying not to talk too much because I know we have a really full agenda, but I do want to say how much this area has grown in 3 years. It's absolutely tremendous to think about the conversations that we were having then and where this work is now. And I was going to share this later, but I'll share it now. I was on a panel at Access Superintendent Symposium, and it was about what superintendents making difficult decisions in difficult times. And the question from one of the professors was, what's working right now for you? And one of the other panelists said CCEE. There's so many resources and there's so many things that I can just go to on the website. So I said, I'm going to share that at our next board meeting, but I think the staff needs to know, and to Board Member Sabrante's comments, we want to know more about who is using it. But that anecdotal comment was really helpful to know that it is really starting to be viewed, I think, much more widely in the field as a true resource and a place to go. And I've funneled so many people there, who've called me about different things. And so just want you to know that that work is really valuable to the field and will be continued to be used and accessed for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think it is a tremendous effort. I think this could be a separate meeting in and of itself to really share all of the work in that field. And truly, it is an all hands on deck effort. I think every single person on staff has contributed substantively to this. So kudos to the entire team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Suji. Any other last comments?
Just one comment. I was going to piggyback on Board Member Lyon's comment too. I also get to participate with the new superintendents. So I was one of 4 folks who are kind of panelists, and they asked them to identify their top 3 resources. Stephanie will be happy to hear, right, that those top 3 resources that were identified, was 53 of them, were from CDE, CCE, and AXA in particular too. So I'm like, hey, we made the top 3, right? So so that was pretty cool. And then what was neat is that, and then afterwards, we kind of all gave them this information. I had 17 of them reach back to me, right, who were not as familiar with us too, and asked how they could access those resources too. So there was some really nice feedback there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to move us to item 3, just because we are approaching the time limit on this item. So moving forward.
Great.
Thank you, Chair Navo and Board. It's my pleasure to give you an update about the system of support today. As you know, I am the Assistant Director for the Statewide System of Support, and I work in close collaboration with our colleagues at the California Department of Education, as well as the State Board and all of our lead agencies across the state. So a couple of elements from this slide that I want to update you on in order to move quickly through this content. I will also be giving you a little bit more of an in-depth update a little bit later. At our last board meeting, I gave you an update about the system of support evaluation. As well, we are helping support the 21 CSLA evaluation. Our partners at RTI are doing an amazing job of coordinating. Some of you, maybe, I think Karen, Member Monroe, you have received a survey that just went out this week around the system of support. We know that it's time consuming for everyone to fill out these surveys, but the information has been instrumental for us as we continue to refine the system of support and we continue to improve the communication across the system of support. So a couple of key things that we've done. I would also like to acknowledge our staff member, Kashani Daniels, who really provides an amazing level of support for me as we help to facilitate the system of support. We hosted a GeoLead meeting several weeks ago, and we will be continuing to work with the GeoLeads on something that I'll update you on a little bit later. As part of that work, one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to support the system as it improves connections across the system. And so I know that it sounds simple, but it's actually fairly complicated. One of our main things that we do is to provide an extensive communication and contact list across the system of support so that we have a directory and we have a spreadsheet that includes all the up-to-date information, sometimes on a weekly basis, of who is coordinating and facilitating each of the lead agencies. And so that has been updated recently with some retirements and people stepping out of education and moving on to other things over the last several months. And that has just really been a huge thing for us to ensure that each of our lead agencies can reach out to any partners across the system at any time. We also have been working hard to understand how we measure the impact of the system of support. So it's not enough to just have an intention around collaboration and communication, but we also have to understand the impact of the system of support. And with the suspension of the dashboard, we are working with our partners at the State Department of Education, as well as at State Board and RTI, to better understand how to get down to some local data around the impact of the system. And we hope to have more information for you on that a little bit later this year, but that's been one of our goals that we've been doing. Can I have the next slide, please? So a couple of things. Last time we gave you an in-depth update about the statewide system of support evaluation. All of those documents are on the CCEE website if you'd like to see them or review them again. And I'll be giving you an in-depth update about refining the system of support coming up next. But I really just want to highlight the work of the Community Engagement Initiative. Stephen is not presenting, so I checked in with him this morning and just wanted to reinforce that the Community Engagement Initiative has been working really hard to launch cohort 2 around their peer leading and learning networks. And so they have added 12 districts and had a kickoff meeting, a launch on January 21st that allowed them to bring many, many LEAs together and celebrate all of the amazing community engagement strategies that each of those LEAs has been engaged in. And so they will have additional resources coming up this spring to highlight those elements of community engagement just in time for our communities to engage with their LEAs around the LCAP revisions. So I think that that will be a very timely resource for them to be able to use. And we're excited about the work of the community engagement. So I'm happy to take questions, but I think in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it back over to Suji, who's going to be talking about some more of our evaluation and impact work.
Yeah, we need the next slide, please. Thank you.
So round home on our goals update. our fourth goal was really focusing on how we both measure and share impact. So thinking about what are the ways in which we implement strategy and initiatives to share lessons learned, measure the impact of our work, identify and share out best practices and lessons learned from the field. And so through this, really thinking about what are the tools, focusing on development of models or kind of continuous improvement of best practice, as well as digging a little bit more deeply into our quality, relevance, usability rubric that we use as a frame to identify and develop resources, tools, and strategies in a more robust setting. So next slide. Through here, I think just a couple of things we want to highlight for you. If you can click on that first link, the Health and Safety Guidebook. So, an example of the ways in which we've engaged in this kind of highlighting of best practice. And now we're in the process of actually refining this, and it should be new next week. But what we've done here is take a look at all of the guidances coming out down through Health and Human Services, the Department of Public Health, to support health and safety in schools and districts, and really think about how do we support meaning making for school and district leadership teams as they navigated that first, again, shift into that virtual learning space and prepared for reopening. In response to the latest guidances, we have actually taken that and taken to the next step to redefine our health and safety guidebook, create a crosswalk against the new versus the currently applied health and safety guidance for schools and districts, and really tried to package this in a way that was most easily accessible for school and district teams. Back to the slide. The next piece, and nothing to click on the rest of these, but the sort of next places that we really dug into thinking about how do we share lessons learned in the field more widely was to launch our Comeback California Schools campaign or initiative. And so we started off with, serving our advisory council members and expanding that out more widely across the field to really get a sense of where LEAs were seeing success, where innovative collaborations with partners, new strategies were helpful in bringing back school teams to support students, to working with their unions to create a better partnership in support of student outcomes. Really think about where we saw models of success within this space and really digging into and highlighting those stories. So we've got the Comeback California Schools website on our site where we actually provide tools, best practices, as well as an audio visual kind of media clips. We have interviews, settings to really help us understand a little bit more about what happened in that particular setting. I think we've shared for you all the Marin County Office of Ed story where the Marin County Office of Ed really never even closed down school supports for their special needs students, really making sure that schools and supports remain continuously open to support those vulnerable student groups. And we're excited, I think, to continue to expand upon this partnership as we identify additional Comeback California School stories. We're working with an initial partnership with LPI as they are launching, their investigation or their kind of deeper dive into really grappling with kind of school success stories, and have been using some of our Comeback California School research and tools to build upon as well. We've also launched our Leading Forward podcast, kind of going into a new multimedia domain for us, where we are partnering with both researchers, but practitioners, especially in some of our school and district leaders, really focusing on their lessons learned from 2020 and their takeaways, and creating a space to really share kind of key research, but also best and promising practices in the field, and really using that as a space for kind of more of a one-on-one through the power of a podcast, way to connect with what's happening across the state, as well as our using that space to really take that as a launching pad to dive deeper into what are the tools that can come out of that? What are the lessons learned? How do we build a more robust platform for allowing others in the state to really access that lesson learned? And then we have our Advancing Equity Initiative as another example of this work, where we have been collaborating with our colleagues at CALSA, San Diego County Office of Ed Equity Lead, and the Santa Clara Equity Leads to really come together and think about this question of what does it truly mean to advance equity across the state, and how do we continue to expand upon the work that individual LEAs are doing to make more robust, to highlight some of those resources, but also create a kind of a common set of language or understandings around what it means to actually advance equity for our most vulnerable student populations. So if you go to that next slide, something that's come out of here that we're excited about is the fact that we've taken our quality, relevance, usability rubrics. So if you remember, this is the rubric that we've used internally to really define, what is of high quality, based on best practices, lessons learned, and research, thinking about tools and resources that are relevant, that is, are really specific to the user's need and context, and very easily usable. It's scalable. It is flexible. It does not require a lot of work on the user to actually apply and use to implement that guidance, that tool, or that lesson learned. And this is a framework that we've now developed with that collective, the Advancing Equity Group, to really define some ways that we think about identifying, developing resources that focus on advancing equity for LEAs and school teams around the kind of quality, relevance, usability rubric. And this is a place where we will continue to dive in. And I think, as we talked a little bit earlier about, a space that we are continuing to develop some more robust processes about, so that we can actually measure our own impact and our own ability to provide high quality, relevant, and usable resources and tools for the field. So with that, I will pause there. I think, again, just to share kind of some of our high level next steps across all of our resources, but also just to check in with the board. Any comments or questions on the last two items?
Well, thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Suji. That was incredibly informative. I really appreciate the hard work that you both have putting into goals 3 and 4. I'll open it up to board for comments, questions. Okay. See. Oh, Tim, go ahead.
I think Board Member Monroe is going to go. Then I'll go after her.
Okay.
You read that, did you? I was trying to follow Board Member Lyons' lead. We could spend all day really wanting to comment on these things. So I will attempt to keep it brief, because I'm sure that this is something that will relate to most of the items. But one of the things that the work that you have done and laid out and dug into really makes me think about the special place CCEE occupies right now in education, because you can see you have captured a lot of what LEAs are doing and best practices and things that they can implement. What I know from where I sit is LEAs are depending on these resources and other things to respond to this time that no one's ever been in before. We, however, have a concern about what it's going to look like on the other side. And most of them don't have the bandwidth to really dig into what this needs to look like when this is over. We're so busy just responding to what it needs to look like right now. So not only do I see the resources you've posted helping people to think about that, adopting a mindset that will help them think that way, But what I'm also concerned that CCEE is able to do, because you're uniquely placed, we are uniquely placed to do this, is look at how the system, and board member Gregson had to step away, but how the system can pivot also to support what future needs are. I see things like an ongoing need for perhaps teachers in distance learning. I mean, even when we come back, there may be families who don't choose to come completely back. There may be, we just really need to think about, does CTC need to think about that? Does, and we can't even touch that right now because, we're trying desperately to get as many schools open as possible. So just really affirming CCEE's role in this space, and it's you chalk it up, Suji, and others too. There will be no rest for the weary, because I just see you being able to lead for this for a very long time. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Board Member Monroe. Board Member Sabrante.
Yeah, no, those are great comments. And in terms of goal 3, I know we have that later on our agenda, so I'll talk about that later. On goal 4, I particularly like the QRU framework. I think for everything that we do, and the materials that we produce, the materials that we share, I think having that mindset, is it high quality? Is it relevant to what our clients in the field are facing now? And speaking to Board Member Moreau's point, in 6 months or in 12 months, and how usable is it? Making sure that, we could produce exhaustive reports and everything else, but the more plug and play, the more adaptable it will be. So I really do like that QRU framework, and I really do think this leading forward, or the way that we share all these different resources, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the website, whether it's the emails, the diversity of the communication tools that we use to make sure that it's getting out there, and making sure that we're amplifying different voices in the field that through their own research are able to see certain trends or see certain things that we can kind of highlight, because different groups might have different perspectives or different successes. So being able to to share some of those different perspectives that are out there from folks' vantage point and experiences, I think is particularly helpful and a great role that we play. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sabrante, for the comments. Any other Board Member? Lyon, I think Gregson's gone. Anything else? Okay. I'll just echo, we could kill this one with a lot of questions and a lot of kudos to the staff, and I'll save my questions for the system of support conversation. But just to echo, the QRU tool, Suji, is really intriguing, and you can see the efforts that you've made to lace UDL into that language. So very much appreciate that. And the heavy lifting that's been done there, and the podcasts, for those of you that haven't had a chance to go in and look and listen to those are phenomenal. So great job. There's a lot to learn there. So we'll just move on through the item.
Yeah, well, thank you too. So I appreciate it. I really want to thank the staff in particular, and for the board for giving us that time. As you know, right, it's a mid-year report, so we're trying to take a lot of what we've been working on and try to kind of synthesize that and provide some specific things too. We know that none of this was a surprise to the board, because we brought this to other board meetings, and we continue to keep those goals in front of us. We're very goal driven. So you notice, and even in our board reports too, we always look specifically within the goal. It drives us, and really try to make sure what are we doing specifically. And in particular, everything is around measuring impact. That continues to be our focus. And so I really want to thank Suji in particular around the QRU work in particular, and focusing us and making sure that it's really being impactful. And it's the same measurement that we use as we partner with others, which has been interesting too, as we've shifted, because I know the board is very familiar with a lot of the work that I think that we did in the very beginning in those first few years. A lot of it was around building collaboration, whatever, but it was often very hard to measure impact, right? How do we know it's actually impactful? How do we know that the work that we did, in particular around collaborating and professional learning networks, actually had impact? And so everything that we do now, and we partner with other folks, and you'll see it in our contracts, we're really specific about how we're going to measure impact, how are we going to get feedback, so that we can really make sure that really it's having some serving the students that we're really supposed to be serving. And I really appreciated Board Member Monroe's comment. Yeah, that's the place we're always living in. Is I think the leading forward was something we've been working on this for a couple of months, thinking, okay, how can we be more responsive as folks start thinking about bringing students back? And what's interesting about that, the more that we go into that, we actually recognize, well, we still need to get better around distance learning, right? We're not abandoning those other things, because part of what we know is that's actually a new resource and a new tool that works for some children in particular, right? As well as, so not only where maybe the pandemic continues a little bit longer than all of us would like, but also how do we not abandon something that we really figured out how to do, right? And continue to look at how that can shift our system, which we know our system doesn't meet the needs of all students, never has, right? So how can we use that and try to continue to shift, think about how we'll shift as we go back, but then also kind of think about what we've learned during this time and where we can shape the system. So that is always on our mind and thinking about as we're meeting with our partners. I think the system of support is a key player in that. You'll hear a little bit around some of that when Ronnie, I think, speaks around how we're starting to shift that and thinking about what have we learned, what's worked, and then what it hasn't worked during the pandemic, so we can think as we move forward. So appreciate all your comments around that and the hard work of the staff. This next item I'm going to go really quickly to, in particular, and I'll have Suji just share really briefly. I know the board is aware that we had the administration in both the California Department of Public Health who reached out to us, a few months back, and it really asked us in particular to really help them as they're trying to engage more in the field. And you've seen the webinars that we've done, and Michelle has become our superstar, right, of facilitating those, and just does a beautiful job with that. And it's really their interest of making sure that they're continuing to stay in front in the education sector in particular. And so how can we support them in that? In addition to that role, they also, in the new guidance that came out in January, there was a new public health directive order, which was basically requiring districts, charter schools, and private schools to now submit their reopening data. And so we were asked to play a role. Our role specifically is not in regards to what that data may look like or what that dashboard may look like. That really is the administration and public health's role. But our role is specifically on how can we actually work with our partners, in particular county offices who've been amazing during this last couple of weeks as we did as the first launch and the first submission was required. The second actually is next week, to reach specifically out to each of those entities, both charter schools and privates and their districts, and then really work with them on how do we get folks registered, right? So how do we get them into the system? And then how do we really help that they actually submit that data, right? And so we're still in that process, been a huge lift. But so Suji's going to share a little bit about what that resubmission, that submission of data looks like. We're not at the place yet where they've created the dashboard. They're working on it, and there's many different examples that they are continuing to play with. Part of their interest there is they still have a fair amount of folks who are still working, have not completed that submission. And so they're really thoughtful about what that data could look like, recognizing it's a big lift. We have another submission next week too. So I think part of it is they're trying to make sure they get it right. And so that's some of what's the delay around that. But with that, I'll have Suji kind of share a little bit of what that submission looks like. And this is what we have used with county offices so that they can really track who's done it, who hasn't done it, and then how can we reach back to really support the folks who need help around registering and putting that data in. So Suji?
Thanks, Tom. So as Tom said, I think CCEE's role in this space has really been to support the communication and rollout of, how can we bridge the governor's office, the administration, public health, state board in terms of the policy implementation, the development team that they've contracted with to do the data collection and develop the site, and then really getting it out as quickly as possible, knowing that I think we had maybe I feel like it felt like a few hours, Tom, between sort of the rollout and getting that first data collection submission open starting last Friday and then closing on Monday of last week. We've been supporting that kind of clean up that process as we navigate some of the system pieces that need to be cleaned up a little bit in terms of understanding, which schools, kind of how we allocated programs and how we refine some of the communication processes. As Tom said, we've been working very directly and closely with our colleagues, the county offices, who have been absolutely phenomenal in really taking up that mantle, reaching out to all of their districts, their charter schools and private schools, helping everybody through what has ultimately been a two-part process. The first is to register a point of contact for each of our LEAs in private schools, to get them a username and login ID or a password for the account for the data collection process. And then from there, logging into the system to actually submit data about their school reopening status. And once you get in, it is not an arduous, data collection at this point. The public health guidance really focuses on what is the primary mode of instruction that is being used, or what is the mode of instruction, whether it's in-person learning, hybrid, or distance learning only, that the majority of the students in your LEA, so across your district, across within your charter school or private school, are being taught through. So it's not a count. It really is just what is our primary mode of instruction. So as you can see, with just a little bit over a week of data collection in, we I think, we have this dashboard. I just want to share. It's an internal dashboard really only, as we've been using to track what submission rates look like. As you can see here, we have over 90% of our districts that have submitted information out of over 1,000 districts. With 1,300 charter schools, we have over 70% of our charters that have submitted their information. And then with over 3,000 private schools, we have nearly half of our private schools that have submitted information. So I think we're launching, gearing up for part 2, or our second administration of data collection. As you know, the public health order required that starting the 25th of January, every 2 weeks on that Monday would be a data collection window. That window is open. It is just for the duration of that Monday, closing 5 p.m. on that Monday, unless it is a state holiday, in which case that deadline rolls over into the Tuesday. So we're coming up on the second data collection period on Monday, and we're actually going to be meeting with the county offices this afternoon and setting up a quick check-in to give them an update on the status. And we will also be providing a more comprehensive guide of instructions based on all the lessons learned and the changes that have been made to the system over the course of the past week and a half.
Yep, thank you, Suji. So we just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. Been a big lift. We put hundreds of hours into that work too, and there's more work to do too. But we also, without those county offices, we really wouldn't be close to where we're at. It has been kind of fun to be able to work with this team called Esri. They work all over the world. Who's actually they're actually contracted through the administration. They were even involved in some of the stuff around the election, the national election, the presidential election, whatever too. And so one of the California is a big place, right? We have a lot of entities. And so they've been really kind of blown away with how much we've been able to do within this first couple of weeks. One of the things we also learned too, and I speak specifically probably around the private schools, right? Being a former county superintendent, right? You don't always have that direct contact with those private schools. I didn't even know where they all were. And even with the current list, I know, my Judy Flores, who's the county super I was prior in Shasta, we even looked at that list together, and she's like, "Do you know them, Tom? Do you know them?" I'm like, "No, I don't know. I don't know those folks too." And so that's been a lift, right? Kind of doing that reach out. We also found that there was some data in there that was old, right? And so that's part of still is the cleanup of some schools have closed or whatever. So that's, this very beginning process. It's going to get cleaner, going to get better as we go forward. And I think the big thing is everybody's interested in the data, right? When we can actually start to see that data. And I think you'll see some of that first piece of data in the dashboard probably come out later next week. But that really, again, that's really the administration's decision in regards to how that piece looks too. So with that, I appreciate your time. Answer any other questions that the board may have too. And I know we've got some other items that we'll speak more directly to in regards to some of the work that we talked around the 4 goals today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Suji, for that information. And I appreciate, once again, I speak on behalf of, I'm sure, the board, that we appreciate all the efforts in the midst of so much pressure on the local district practitioners to try to figure out all of the things that they need to do and all of the resources that would help them accomplish those, and the pressures on county offices to try and make sense of what's happening for them. Just appreciate the effort of CCEE trying to help bring clarity to those conversations and efforts. So I'm going to move us forward here. Is there any other discussion from the board on these items? Okay, seeing none, is Leanne, I'll ask if there's any public comment.
No, there's no public comment received.
Okay, being none, Tom, any last comments related to the item?
No, just
okay.
thank you.
All right, and board, seeing no hands raised for further comment on item 3, I'm going to close item 3. And before we go to item 4, I know we have a break after item 4, but Tom, I'm going to need at least a 3-minute break here. And I imagine board members, that might be something that you welcome. Okay, so let's just take a quick brief 3-minute break and we'll be back at 10:21. Thank you, everyone, for indulging me with a brief break. I think we all needed it, and it was very, again, thank you to the team on item 3. That was, there was a lot there, and it highlights a lot of the hard work and efforts of the CCEE. We appreciate it very much. That takes us to item 4, direct technical assistance, establishing systems and structures of systemic instructional review, the SIR progress monitoring. This is also information and discussion. So just board, as you look at the agenda, we have a lot of information discussion items today. And I'll turn that over to Deputy Director Carla Estrada and Matt Roberts.
Thank you so much. Good morning again, Board Chair Navo and Vice Chair Sabrani and CCEE board members. Dr. Roberts and I really appreciate the opportunity to update you on the systems and structures CCEE has been developing and implementing to ensure progress monitoring of direct technical assistance, implementation of SIR recommendations, and support provided as a result of the systemic instructional review. As you know, the direct technical assistance for high need districts identified through the legislation and the California School Dashboard is still fairly new for CCEE. So I want to start by saying thank you first to Tom, because he has very much made sure that we're establishing high expectations and standards for our practice and our work in this space. And so I thank him also for reading SIR reports many a time to just make sure that we've got it just right. And so I want to thank him for his leadership in ensuring that we're moving in that direction with the highest quality. I also want to thank our districts who we work with, our County Office of Ed, CDE, and FICMAT partners for their ongoing collaboration and feedback as we work together and meet our role to advise and assist LEAs in advancing student achievement. Next slide, please. So as we look at student achievement, one of the things that we found really interesting was how do we determine what is effective teaching and learning? And as we researched and developed the systemic instructional review process and report, we found that there were many different ways to define effective teaching and learning. There is evidence to stronger methods for teaching and learning practices, but we always know that the students, the content, teacher training, and other conditions really impact what is delivered and received. So there really is an art and science to teaching, as we all know. And so our process was designed in a way of understanding that. But as we approach progress monitoring, we must also consider how do we measure growth and impact. And we decided to really make sure that it was grounded in continuous improvement. Next slide, please. As we thought about it, we really looked at the research, we looked at practice, we looked at policy, what was our responsibility as we think about the systemic instructional review, our role in advising and assisting, and again, recognizing that there is an art and science to teaching. We've all visited classrooms and it brings us such joy to be able to see students engaged in learning, teachers supporting, other staff working together to be able to ensure that kids are successful. But there is a method in which that is all designed. And so as we designed the SIR process, we really made sure we were taking an asset-based approach, but also in order to be able to ensure that we can also be truth tellers in this process. And so as I go over some of the activities that we've created for progress monitoring, I do welcome the feedback as we go through this and being able to make sure that we continue to improve to demonstrate that impact. Next slide. CCEE's approach to direct technical assistance, I think it's important to just reground us, is focus on collaborating, building capacity, supporting quality implementation, and utilizing that continuous improvement. And what we find is once the SIR process is done, the real work has to happen, and that's really changing practice. And so we have to see through collaboration, capacity building, understanding and supporting quality implementation using continuous improvement, we have to go through that to be able to ensure that we can be a useful resource and also a good partner. Next slide. As a reminder, this is our SIR process. We have obviously engaged in team planning and support. We engage in the SIR review, and then we engage in the ongoing progress monitoring as well as planning. And so for many of our districts, we'll be transitioning from the first 2 phases to the 3rd one. And again, I emphasize this is really where the heavy work has to happen. Next slide.
So good morning, everyone. So this slide breaks out the steps a little bit more from the previous slide, the easel slide. It breaks down the steps toward to move from SIR to improve student outcomes, as Dr. Estrada was talking about, into that process of continuous improvement. Notice the first 4 steps really get into the systemic instructional review, having it completed, making sure that we're communicating out, making sure that the process is set up, making sure that the relationships are in place, so that when we do get to those end results in terms of progress outcomes, that we're able to communicate them with transparency, using leading and lagging indicators, and using data that's able to really tell the story about what is happening in the district. And then lastly is that last step, which is highlighted, is demonstration of improved student outcomes. And so always trying to tell that story in sort of a recursive way. And so really those last 2 steps are meant to be a recursive process as part of that continuous improvement process that Dr. Estrada talked about. Next slide, please. So there are 3 main post-SIR activities, and this is what Dr. Estrada alluded to earlier in her presentation, that we engage with CCEE. The first is communication, making sure that we provide transparency around the processes, around what the SIR is intended to do, around the goals and action steps that we're wanting to prioritize, making sure that those priorities are sort of aligned with other district initiatives and budgets and LCAPs and the other plans that sort of emerge forward. So making sure that we're ahead of the game on the communication. We'll go into that in a minute. The second one is progress monitoring. And again, the purpose is to measure the rates of improvement and do it in a sort of a recursive way that tells the story on a frequency level. We're happy to roll these progress monitoring results up at least 3 times a year, and we're currently working on an annual impact report that will sort of roll up the entire year's progress monitoring with maybe a statewide look. So pretty excited about that roll up, but it's all contingent on the good progress monitoring. We'll talk about that in a minute too. And lastly is the ongoing support. And the purpose is to provide those ongoing support. And here, if we've set up the job correctly, right, with building relationships as the partners, as Dr. Estrada pointed out, with CDE, with our county offices of education, with our parents who are so important these days in the educational process. So making sure that we're assisting. Okay, let's move on and drill down a little bit more. And here we'll talk about communication. Let's move on to the next slide. So here we have a 3-pronged approach that we take for sharing of the final SIR report, but also to continue to make sure that communication is transparency. There's a thought that I think that we have, and that is that the more that we make it transparent, the more that we can build synergy and energy around the collective work that we're doing statewide, in a community, and so forth. So the first portion is a set of resources and tools that we provide to district leadership in order to communicate across their various stakeholders within the district the SIR results, but also what are the next steps? What are we doing next? How are we prioritizing? How are we including people in our stakeholders underneath within the process? And then of course, school site level resources, knowing where the change actually occurs in the classroom, but also beginning at the school site, making sure that the messages are distributed down to the school sites and around. And then lastly, communicating progress. And progress is something that's a collective vision or a collective piece, making sure that we all have accountability for communicating that progress. Let's go on to the next slide, please.
Thank you. So as we dive deeper into progress monitoring, thank you, Leanne, we've really worked hard to establish what would be the key activities that help us to understand both process, how we've been able to improve in some systems and structures efforts, but also in student outcomes. And so the two bookends really serve in being able to communicate that. First, which is the CCEE SIR improvement monitoring tool, which I will go more in depth with in a second. And the other end would be the California School Dashboard. Again, I think right now with the pause on the school dashboard data, you'll see that especially that middle piece, that work that we're doing with the LEAs in continuous improvement cycles, as well as being transparent about the progress that's being made on the SIR recommendations will become even more important. And how we do that with them is something that we will share with you in a second, so that way you can see what we're thinking about. I think the other piece of making sure that we design activities is, one, to make sure that CCEE can identify really what have been our internal mechanisms for ensuring that we can communicate what has been with fidelity the implementation of our recommendations, as well as the dashboard serving as an opportunity to be able to say, and how has that been able to impact student outcomes? And so again, we will be looking to really spend a lot more time in activity 2 and 3 as we continue to move forward, because of the fact that we do have a pause on the school dashboard, but there's also data within the school system that it serves as an opportunity for us to help them leverage, such as formative assessment data, as well as other social emotional, attendance related data, behavioral data. So it really does serve as an opportunity, as we all know, that really to help inform the district. But I think it's one of those things that the bookends really help make sure that there is some kind of way in which external ways of measuring progress can occur. Next slide. So the first one you'll see is really that internal assessment of progress on the SIR recommendations. It really measures the process improvements, which include system structures and capacity building. This also serves as our ability to inform the CDE's team, so state superintendent, as well as the chief deputy superintendent, on what the progress has been made as far as the implementation of the SIR recommendations, especially now with 52072, which is legislation that describes our role in advising and assisting, and then being able to provide recommendation on whether the district is able to implement the recommendations we've provided. It's really important for us to have this kind of process to determine whether progress is being made. But nevertheless, it also serves as an opportunity to work with the district in understanding where they have made progress and when they have not. This will occur 3 times a year in November, March, and June. And if you could go to the next slide, please. I'll show you what that is beginning to look like. So we've developed a progress monitoring tool. We partner with some folks who've been really digging into data and who has really been looking at how do you measure things like processes in order to be able to engage in continuous improvement. And so we have defined it based on whether the district has not started on a recommendation, is in progress, and has completed that recommendation. And we collect evidence to be able to support that. And so then we're able to also, over time, share with the district where increases of implementation have occurred, where there hasn't, really being also to problem solve why this has occurred or why it has not. This is very similar to FCMAT's process of collecting evidence, for example, in Inglewood, where we were learning very much from them on how they were doing that process. And so we've created a dashboard for us to be able to communicate with our partners. And again, in a second, I'll share with you greater transparency with community and other partners, what their progress has been in implementing the SIR recommendations. Next slide. Now, as we think about step 2, what we're really looking at is progress monitoring for the LEA in a manner that really is building their capacity. This is probably the area that I think is the most critical. The other thing that we've really learned so far from engaging in these types of continuous improvement cycles, that short cycles work best for these districts. Being able to have very clear targets, focus, benchmarks, and really being able to have set times that we come back and reflect on whether progress has been made or not, it becomes really important. The other thing we found is that it's really important to determine how this aligns with the DA process, or the differentiated assistance process that the county is providing. That's where we've seen the greatest power, is being able to align those kinds of activities in a manner that provides extra support to the district. So a lot of our part-time professional experts, for example, are a part of that DA process, sometimes with the team, or are part of working with the county and the district and being able to engage in these cycles of continuous improvement. And this is really also where the richness, when we have these check-in meetings with the district on the progress of the implementation of the SIR, this is where we are able to get deeper into the weeds of like, why have we made progress to celebrate and why we have not? And being able to, in many ways, have to also be a truth teller of, I know you're feeling like you've made progress, but are you seeing the quality of impact that you wanted to make? And being able to help districts establish those kinds of benchmarks is another area of capacity building that we've also seen. How do you know that, for example, the assessments that you want to complete is that really meaningful data if your participation rate right now is down to 20%, for example? How can we actually engage in a continuous improvement cycle to see who's really participating, why are they or not, and then understand how the data is actually being used to make it meaningful. And so this process, again, I think is the most important. I will also say to the board that it's the area that is also not clearly articulating defined perfectly. And so I think there's no template, for example, that we say to everybody, you must complete this document that you need to provide to us within a certain amount of time. And it was done so with the intent of really making sure that we can co-construct, we have the SIR recommendations so we know what needs to happen, but how do we do it is something that we like to do in partnership with the district and the county. But I also welcome, as I shared with you, we are still engaging in continuous improvement. We want to make sure this is meaningful. The initial places we've done this with the districts and the counties has worked well, but I also sense that sometimes people want something much more concrete. And so it may be something that in our 3.0 of the SIR process, we need to define and get tighter. And so I do want to highlight it as an area that we want to continue to reflect on to determine if it's working for us and the districts. Next slide, please. This is the third activity, which again, I think is also a real key rich area for us to reinforce that transparency and also the impact and progress that's being made. This is an external infographic that based on activity 1 and 2 would inform this progress monitoring report. And so right now it's in draft form. We're working, again, learning from partners. This is actually built from an example that Alameda County Office of Education has been using for their intensive support and technical assistance they've been providing, a way to show to the community and the public the progress that a district's been making based on their recommendations. And we thought it was a great opportunity for us to think about how do we make that transparent as well on the instructional end. And so this would be something that twice a year we would be providing to the district based on this information, posting on our website to be able to be transparent. We'd hope that the districts would also share with their stakeholders, and this would occur 2 times a year in the fall and spring. And again, it would just be reflecting where they are on our recommendations and be aligned to the SIR report. So if people wanted to go deeper, or if boards or other members wanted to understand more deeply why they've made progress or not, this creates that opportunity to be able to do that with a document that's transparent and easily accessible. Next slide. And lastly, the school dashboard, that really becomes the other bookend. Again, I think as we continue to move forward, I think this has been a real in the past opportunity to be able to confirm that the work that's happening with the SIR implementation and the implementation of those recommendations, the partnership with the county and the CDE and sometimes FCMAP partners, where we've seen this has been that next level of affirmation that we really need to help to show impact. And so with the pause on the dashboard, it's something that we will need to make sure that the other activities really reflect how we're communicating that progress. And as Matt shared, really excited to be able to create a challenge for us of creating a stronger data story that's different. And so we're excited to be able to do that with the more of an annual impact report where we might use more vignettes and local data that the district is using to measure their own ongoing continuous improvement and progress as we move forward. So these are the main 4 activities that we're using to be able to move this work forward. Next slide. This is an overarching slide. This is something that we wanted to be able to share with our LEAs so they can understand what time of year these would occur throughout the school year. And so you can see they very much build upon each other. We create the first cycle where we're able to engage with the district, understand where their priorities are, get us some focus, and then being able to use our SIR improvement monitoring as a way to affirm. And so this would be something that would be happening at different periods of time of the year. But as I've shared, hopefully, and I've communicated, that these are all things that should feel very tied together, connected to each other, built on continuous improvement, but also really being able to effectively communicate whether you've made that progress or not, and in particular around those student groups that we know we've been asked to examine more deeply with the district and the county. Next slide.
And so let's wrap up with ongoing support. And so the CCEE role is very clear. Our role is to advise and assist. And we're very clear as we move into the phase 3 or the progress monitoring phases of the SIR process. It's important that as a district reports progress and in their continuous cycles, eventually we would want to move the district towards greater independence, where the partners that they've established along the way, whether it be the County Office of Education or other partners, CDE, et cetera, are able to wrap around them in a continuum as they go forth in their work. And so as those collaborative partners are built along the way, we can ensure that resources will continue to sort of drive to support the actions and the outcomes as we move forward. And so a lot of this, again, is based on the relationships that we have sort of forged going into it, and making sure that everybody's focused, to Dr. Estrada's point, on the entire plan. Next slide, please. So I'm pleased to present the thank you slide and ask for questions from the board. There's an additional slide after this that talks about the 12 components of the SIR process. And I know that there's another handout within the board packet that's more of a drill down, but happy to take questions. Dr. Estrada?
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Thank you, Matt.
Carla, thank you. Matt, thank you. That was incredibly informative also. And just love the way you laid that out for us. It was taking something that was really big and complex and breaking it down for us. I appreciate that. Board members, I'll open it up to you for comments and discussion. Questions? Board Member Monroe?
Just quickly with what Carla pointed out with the progress monitoring tool that we worked together on. I just think that that is a really good illustration of CCEE's willingness to take something we had put in place and work with it to help the community, the board members see, oh, this looks familiar. Okay, this is not something completely new. So just a concrete illustration of that point of the importance of collaboration and that it's actually happening. Thank you so much.
Thank you to your team. They were very willing to share with us, from their own learnings. And I think that's part of this process, right? We're trying to learn from what has been working for folks and what hasn't. And so what could be that additional way in which CCEE could be helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Monroe. Any other comments, questions? Board Member Sabrante, and then Board Member Lyon.
I'll let Board Member Lyon.
Okay, Board Member Lyon.
Mine's really just a question, and if this was said, I apologize. Just in terms of looking at the progress monitoring and the goals that have been established, especially those that were done sort of pre-COVID, what kind of adaptive processes are being put in place? Because some of those goals may have been, and actions may have been put in place thinking of a very different environment than we're in right now. And, I see the 3 categories on the progress monitoring. I'm wondering if there's a 4th one that's sort of on hold, because not starting seems to me to be very different than something that may not be applicable in this context.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of the things we've had to be adaptive to. One of the nice things that we've learned from our SERP process, for example, is we used to give more direction based on our recommendations. So if you look at the Inglewood report, for example, we used to prescribe 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, what should be accomplished, what should not. And what we actually found was that was not probably the best way to help the districts prioritize, really own their recommendations, and then also be able to adapt to the changing needs that happen in the district. So one thing that we've done is we now provide the recommendations, and that way the district, and we're happy to continue in our advise and assist role along with the county, be able to say, okay, which ones do you want to prioritize because they feel most meaningful for right now. And so that's been really helpful, especially with the pandemic, because of the fact that there are certain priorities that the district is really clear that things need to be put on pause and be able to jump into some other recommendations because this is much more relevant right now. I will say, however, in the districts where we're seeing the greatest work and gain is where they also use this opportunity to get really focused. Because of this, as you all know, whenever you've managed, one time in my life, I was a behavior specialist. And in those moments, those crisis moments, it's most important to be focused. People need to have very few things that they're focusing on and continuing to improve on. And so actually what we found is by helping them focus on a few things, this is where activity 2 becomes really important. It is by that process, we say, what's working for you, what's not. And I gave an example around assessment, participation rates. It's not just about giving assessment, especially during the pandemic. It's about what's working for folks, what's not, why. Can you learn from this so you can also inform future assessment practices, listen to teachers, figure out what. So the data that helps drive progress on those recommendations might also look different because they've got to problem solve in a different way. And so again, that's why I say those 2 bookends of our own internal SER improvement monitoring tool of recommendations is important because it lets us know where they are or not. There's not a good or bad if you've done more things than another period of time in the year, but it lets you know what your status is. And then you have the other bookend that around student outcome data that's really important. But the in-between, that's the most meaningful part. It is in those engagements, a cycle improvement. You know, we partner with CDE, for example, of understanding what assessments they've done. As board member Gregson was mentioning, we look at their reports on compliance, completion rates. Is that where we need to start actually in continuous improvement cycles to figure out what's your current status, where do we need to get better, and how can we help you get there, and who might we partner to do that with? Now more than ever is probably the most critical time to use those kinds of cycles. So I think it's one of those things that we've had to adapt and not be so prescriptive too, because it actually, it became more of a barrier than helpful in keeping them moving and implementing those recommendations.
Great, thank you. Board Member Sabrante.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see how much built out, how much this is really getting done, you know, in terms of just the evolution of the SERP process. Just a couple thoughts on the monitoring piece. I think it's important while we do that work to engage, you know, district leadership and county leadership, that we also engage teachers and classified staff as well, because they're going to have perspectives in the field, you know, relative to some of the initial feedback that they gave, also to where we're meeting where maybe their district's meeting the mark, where it's not, you know. So I think that's really important, continuing to do that. And then I think it's a balance between being a thought partner throughout the monitoring phase and the latter phases, but at the same time also trying to build that independence, you know, where they become self-sufficient, they rely on their own community partners, they rely on their own county office. So it's a fine balance, but, you know, I think, you know, that's just always something to keep in mind. And then lastly, I continue to believe that, you know, while certain LEAs get assigned to us based on statute and the dashboard, you know, in future years, once we get back to the dashboard again, I do think there are opportunities as we perfect this SERP process to engage other districts who willingly want to go through a SERP process. You know, as we get better and as we have findings, and it may not be a thorough SER, all 12 buckets, but maybe there's 3 or 4, you know. So I do think as we do this, we should kind of keep that in mind. That advise and assist doesn't always have to be to those who have the most challenged performance indicators. There are other opportunities perhaps to willingly opt in, whether it's a full SER or a mini SIR. I don't know what that looks like, but I do think there are opportunities as we build this out and learn how to build the capacity through the SIR to work, whether it's fee for service or, other ways that looks. But I think that's something that should be, on our radar for the future.
Thank you, board member. And I hope David Toston was listening carefully to that, because that's really something we'd love to have him help us build out, and hope in June to bring some type of proposal, what we're thinking that could the do-it-yourself and the fee-for-service work could potentially look like.
Thank you, Board Member Sabrante. Dr. Estrada, do I understand you have more to this item, right? You have more
No.
to share? Okay.
No.
Okay. No, thank you very much for all of the heavy lifting regarding the SIR. I really like the progress monitoring tools, and that second attachment in the item, the report, incredibly helpful. I think for systems to have a bird's eye, or take a step back and look at a systems view and see their progress. So very, very much well done. Any other comments, questions? Tom?
Yeah, I really appreciate the board's comments. And in particular, I wanted to kind of respond a little bit to Board Member Sabrante. I think kind of hit some of it on the head as well as, and I think some of it also went to Board Member Lyons' question in particular. It's interesting where in this progress monitoring, especially around 52072, we have a specific role as defined in statute, right? And then we know around 52074, our general role around advise and assist. And the advise and assist is pretty broad, right? You're advising, assisting, and so it's very generic, if you will, right? And where you can be in this role. And I have to tell you, in conversations that Carla and I had as we've continued in this role, we were trying to make sure that we get it right, even with Jim Baca in particular. He really helped me understand kind of a little bit about this particular role. And we all, right, prior to 52072, our main role is just to advise and assist. We now all of a sudden have this new role. And we actually, in that, within that particular ed code, we actually have to make a finding, right? So we have to actually make a finding to determine, in particular, does the district have the capacity, right, to actually be able to move forward with the recommendations that we provide. So one of the things we knew early on was, well, we're gonna have to make recommendations, right? And so we need to actually get in there, right? And really, so we've really been really thoughtful about really getting in there and really trying to determine what do we see. And then based on that, we tell them what we see. And then based on what we see, we really lift that up and share those specifically with recommendations and actions, but we don't define those specifically. We're not prescriptive. And that's actually been hard for some of our districts, right? Because they're like, you're not gonna tell us what to do? We're like, no, we're not. What we're gonna do is we're gonna tell you what we see, and we're gonna actually highlight, and we'll see themes. We definitely see themes in particular that are some strong themes in particular that you really need to be considering thinking about. But also we have to do that with those student groups that were identified in the dashboard. That's really key to the work. So that's been difficult. So now what happens is in our role, so we've been advising, assisting, and now we shift to this progress monitoring role. And we really have to, in these conversations with the district now, is being able to say, okay, we provided you with that information. Now we really need to hear from you, right? How are you going to prioritize? How are you going to take these recommendations, in particular with those student groups in mind, right? To be able to move forward. And again, what we also suggest with them is we can also come alongside you in our advise and assist role. We can help you with that, but we don't have to. And we're also not going to do it for you. We'll do it with you if you'd like us to, but you don't have to engage us in that role. So that's the other piece around, once we've done that, the district can say, okay, thank you, CC, we appreciate this, we've got this, right? And move forward. But then we still have to continue to progress monitor to be able to say, are we actually seeing growth for children, right, in particular? Because we still have that role, right? So that's the way, that's our theory of action. But we also are really particular on where we'll advise and assist kind of halts for a second, right? Until we can really determine what's the district's plan, right? On really making sure that they're going to look at those recommendations, and then where do they really want us to engage? But our engagement now also shifts because it's heavily focused on those recommendations. It's not something what we may have been doing prior that is not connected, particular to the SIR. It's directly in line with the SIR and those recommendations. So new territory for us, new territory for districts, right? It's this new theory of action where you don't necessarily just come in. I think folks are struggling with that a little bit because they're like, what's the plan? And we're like, well, that's what we need to have that conversation with you. And it goes to, I think, to Board Member Sabrante's point, right? It's your plan, it's your district, right? You know what works within your district, what's going on currently, how do we align that with what you're already working on, right, specifically, and then how do we support you in some of that work? But the goal is you've got to own it, right? It's got to be something you own, you get to develop, and we can help you in some of that development too. So I just want you to know we're extremely intentional about that, and this is the part I think that where Carla was saying it's not perfect. It's going to be different everywhere we go as to what that role could look like, which I actually think that maybe is the art, right, and the science, right? I think as Carla had spoke about earlier too. So that said, too, it was really important for us. We wanted you to really dig in on this piece, focused heavily around the progress monitoring, because this is a real shift for us beyond just the advise and assist role.
Thank you, Tom. You highlighted the fine line that CCEE has to walk between support and advising and the requirements of 52072 that require you to actually, the stakes are actually getting higher for districts in this process, and you're trying to help them avoid the consequences of poor decisions or a lack of coherence. And it just, the effort, what was underscored for me in the conversation is that the energy that it requires for the CCEE to develop the right relationships and connections to cultivate the work that needs to get done. If you were just coming in as an outsider and saying, here it is, and not spending time, or you didn't have the time to cultivate those relationships, this process would probably be much less equipped to accomplish its goals. So I just commend you on the energy that's been put into developing the underbelly, the tender underbelly that has to be put in place to do the heavy lifting. I will turn it over to the board for any final comments before we go to public comment. Okay, there being none. Leanne, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comments have been received.
Okay, seeing no public comment. Board, is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Tom, do you want to, any final comments before we close?
Just a big thank you to Carla in particular for her leadership, right? I really appreciate Carla and Suji really were the ones 2 years ago who said, hey, we better get ready for this, and created the SIR, with some real professional experts, and did a lot of research and looked at other states too, and then just continues to shift. This has been Carla and I together, this has been our push this year, is to really get strong around this progress monitoring. Also, I think the board is seeing the transparency. It's another piece that we're really trying to work on, that we're being very transparent. And then the other piece, I think, what Board Member Sabrante was saying, we wanted us to keep in mind or be thinking about how we were moving forward. That will be a goal for us. It already is currently. It's part of when we brought David on. David will have some responsibility, but that is a place we want to go. We've heard that from the field, in particular around this idea of, do we have to wait until we're identified somehow on the dashboard to really get some other type of support? And we want to get to that place to be able to do that. And so you will see some efforts around that next year.
Fantastic. Yes. Thank you again, Carla and Matt. Appreciate all the extra effort and labor that goes into this. Tom, thank you for those comments. And that brings a close to item 4 and actually gets us to a 10-minute break. So we've been sitting for roughly 2 hours. Board members, I assume you're okay with that? All right. So we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 11 after. I needed that break as well. Thank you, everyone. That takes us to item 5. System of support in 2021. This has 3 attachments. It's an information discussion item. And that takes us, presenter is Ronnie Jones.
Great. Thank you, Chair Navo, and board members. We appreciate your time to hear a little bit about what's happening with the system of support. If I could have the next slide. The first thing that I want to start with is just a quick update on a couple of lead agencies that have been added to the system of support. So you can see that we have the expert literacy lead and the dyslexia initiative lead who have been added. They were those lead initiatives were both awarded to the Sacramento County Office of Education. I also want to acknowledge that we have a few new graphics in this presentation that our staff, both Dorcas Kong and Kashani Daniels, have been working really hard to make sure that we're updating our graphics and information. You'll see that in that most outer circle there to the right of the system of support graphic, that initially there were probably 6 or 7 lead agencies that were listed there, and now we have multiple lead agencies. So the complexity of the system continues to grow over time as lead agencies are added, but a couple of things have remained consistent. First of all, the LEAs remain at the center of the system of support, and the needs of LEAs remain at the center of the system of support. And I'll show you how the system is continuing to adapt and be responsive to the needs of LEAs as I continue my presentation. You'll also see that the cornerstone of the system of support include the 58 county offices of education. They are the frontline support system for any of our LEAs who might be struggling or who have a need. And we know that the county offices have just been doing an immense amount of work and have had a huge lift during this time when we've been responding to COVID and trying to get LEAs up and running for distance learning. And then finally, the focus of the majority of our presentation today is going to be about our 7 geographic lead agencies that are made up of 9 different county offices. And they continue to have a very central role within the system of support that we're going to talk about today. So if I could go to the next slide, please. So you'll see that within the geographic leads, we obviously have 7 different regions, 7 different areas that are supported by our 9 county offices that were selected in this role. For those of you who have been around, I think that's the majority of our board, that the geographic leads were selected just over 2 years ago in order to start their work. And as you can imagine, in that 2 years, much has shifted with the state, especially recently with the response to COVID and many of our issues related to social justice that happened over the summer and into the fall last year. So what has been happening with the geographic leads is that the state agencies, the State Department of Education, as well as the State Board of Education and CCEE, have come together with CCESA and a few representatives from CCESA, including Karen Staff Walters, to take a look at what are the successes of the geographic leads and where can we actually deploy the expertise and existing work of the geographic leads across the state in response to our shifting educational environment. We've done that in a few different ways. The agencies came together and had a conversation based on the data that's been collected as part of the RTI evaluation to identify the strengths of the geographic leads. These included collaboration and strong relationships with their partner county offices. The core work of the geographic leads has always been to build the capacity of their partner county offices outlined in the map that you see, and to identify the local needs of LEAs within those geographic areas in order to create resources, provide support, facilitate professional learning for those LEAs and county offices. But we also know that there are now a few very central needs of LEAs across the state that the state agencies really think that the geographic leads have the skill and expertise to lead some initiatives around. So the state agencies, along with the geographic leads, came together on January 15th for a fairly expansive meeting. It was 3 hours. And for those of you who have ever sat on a 3-hour Zoom meeting, we appreciated their patience. We made it as engaging as possible. But one of the things that we did is we worked with them to propose a couple of new structures. And the main new structure that we proposed to them was to find a small number of critical areas of focus that the geographic leads could really dig into and do some in-depth work in. Take all of their existing work, right? We don't want to leave behind the existing work and the great work that they've done over the past 2 years, but to use those experiences, to use those resources, to use that data and dig in deeply to a couple of critical areas and really be able to provide some resources statewide that can support our LEAs and ensure that these areas of critical need are addressed across the state and that we have a wide perspective of needs of LEAs. So if you actually go to the next slide, please. So you can see our process here, and I'm just going to point you to the 4th bullet that at that meeting on the 15th, we identified some critical areas of focus. I actually am going to refine the last bullet for you because we've had 2 subsequent meetings with GeoLeads since then. But the things that really came to the top across the state are the social emotional well-being of students and staff as a critical area. And we know many of our geographic leads have been working in this area. So how do we bring them together and collectively look at resources and strategies and processes that they have been able to pilot or utilize within their geographic regions and make those statewide resources for our LEAs and county offices? The other critical area of a need is data cultures and processes. As you know, with the suspension of the statewide dashboard, there's a need to really dig into local data and help our LEAs really utilize and understand local data. I would also argue, we could have a side conversation, that has always been a need, that the dashboard does not necessarily provide all of the data that our LEAs need to utilize to make those decisions. I think the DTA team presented information about that very well in their presentation that they just did. So the second critical area is around data culture and process, especially with the focus on local data in the coming year. The last area you can see there, when I had to submit my slides, we hadn't really settled on an area, but in the last week or so, we've brought together the GeoLeads again. And the third area, it looks like, is really going to be around formative assessment and accelerating learning. We tried to really narrow these so that they're not broad topics. We're going to do a really deep dive into a very specific area, but the geographic leads made the case that you cannot divorce formative assessment from accelerated learning. And so the way that they define that is you have to know where your students are and how to move them forward. And we know that that will be especially important moving into the fall as our students are re-engaged with our LEAs and coming back to school, hopefully in person in the fall. And so our next steps really include continuing to bring the geographic leads together. You can see there on the second bullet, we're going to be forming improvement teams around these 3 core areas of focus. And again, we're going to build on the work that our GeoLeads have already done. Many of our GeoLeads have created work groups within their geographic area related to these areas like data culture. We're going to take that learning. We're going to bring some of the geographic areas together with their partner county offices. And then we're also going to engage the other system of support leads. So we have an all leads meeting scheduled for February 26th, where our geographic leads are going to be presenting each of these critical areas to the rest of the system of support and really recruiting any of our other lead agencies who want to contribute, who want to be thought partners, who want to join these learning and improvement teams around these particular areas. And we're really going to do some work to prototype solutions, to try some things out. We know that our county offices might already be piloting some things with their LEAs, and we're really going to focus on having some sort of resource or solutions or innovations that will have a positive impact on student outcomes in these particular areas. And so we're also going to be using improvement science in our own design so that we're really going to look at a 90-day cycle this spring. So we're really going to get started with these teams in March, and they will go through the end of June. And then we're going to reconvene everybody and really determine how that worked. Was that something that was really successful? What were our challenges? And CCEE is going to be working to provide some support through some of our part-time professional experts. We know our geographic leads within our county offices are a little bit overwhelmed with the work that they have. It is now LCAP season, and many of our staff in county offices are working on LCAP. So we're going to try to provide them with some support in project management around this work, to schedule meetings and do some of those things. And so I've been working with our DTA staff to get recommendations on some of our part-time professional experts who can be of service to our geographic leads and to our improvement teams as we move forward in this work. And so we feel like through the spring, we'll have some exciting developments to report to you, especially as we get to the end of our year sometime in June, and we can report back to you what some of the outcomes are from these focus areas in order to make sure that we have the supports that our students need. And I think that we haven't finished talking about this yet, but obviously many of these resources will be featured on the different professional learning sites that Suji walked you through. We're still working through those plans to ensure that they are shared at a statewide level. Staff at State Board and CDE have been very integral to this process. As a matter of fact, I have a flurry of emails from Anissa Sonnenberg and Sarah Petrowski, who are my partners in this work, as we continue to collaborate across the state agencies in order to move this forward. So I think I'm going to end there and just take a few minutes for questions. And I would be happy to respond to anything that you have, or to take any suggestions that you have.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for highlighting so many important features of the system of support with regards to the geo leads, and highlighting the collaboration efforts at the end there. I appreciate that. Board members, any comments, discussion, questions? Board Member Gregson.
Thank you, Chair Nava. So Ronnie, I just want to say thank you. This has been a journey over the past several years as we have looked at what the system of support was in the legislation, how that translated to reality, and then being able to reflect and refine the partnership and the collaboration, the roles and responsibilities. It's definitely been a journey, but one that has had many positive lessons and positive creations around partnerships. So thank you for all the work that you have been doing on the CCE, and I appreciate the State Board and my own staff in supporting this work, but it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah, it has. And we're thrilled to have Anissa Sonnenberg as our new partner in this work. She's new in her role to support the system of support full time. And I'm just thrilled to have her as my partner.
Yes, she's definitely the right person for that role.
Thank you, Board Member Gregson. Thoughtful comments. Board Member Monroe.
Yes, thanks so much, Ronnie. You know, also in the category of keeping it real, you know, it's definitely been a storming, norming, forming, hopefully performing process at this point. I still have, you know, little chills down my spine when I think of where we started from and where we've come to. So really just looking at what I like about what you laid out is that though it has been somewhat messy in that we as GeoLeads and Alameda County is lead in the geographic lead area that you saw on the map. But as GeoLeads have been able to kind of have a sandbox, you know, we proposed one thing, but then really saw what was needed at this particular time, and this time before the pandemic and now during the pandemic. So one of the things that we've been able to do, and this is actually in partnership, Matt, with West Ed, is that we put a paper together, a white paper together about the work that the county offices have done that we'll be presenting in a couple of weeks about students experiencing homelessness. And so that area of chronic absenteeism, homelessness, all of that is something we've been leaning into because in the Bay Area, that is a huge focus. Homelessness actually put many of our districts who heretofore were considered high performing on the differentiated assistance list into DA because the volumes of students there were and the disparate outcomes for them were so pointed. So whereas I may not have been able to see initially where this could take us, we certainly have been able to rally around some things that have been critical for the students in our area. So now I think as you're laying it out, you can tell me if I'm off base here, but I think that, you know, where you had geographic leads that had particular focus areas, you know, the SELPA leads, and I'm forgetting the other.
Well, we've the community engagement leads. We have the Title III EL specialists that are part of the system of support, all of that.
So those emerged from a particular topic area to organizing around those topic areas. And then you had some that were emerged around a collective of professionals, and then the issues emerged from there. So with that, you now have several hubs that are able to lead in particular areas. So, and it may or may not be geographically, it may be by area of expertise. So anyway, just this reflecting on this crazy experiment and where it's led us to, and what can happen if you have really capable, passionate people who are given the freedom to explore what is needed for students in their area. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Superintendent Monroe. We know that each of the geographic areas has really dug in deeply to the needs of their local area. Like you said, your geographic area really was exploring students experiencing homelessness and strategies to support them. We know that the Shasta geographic area really dug into chronic absenteeism and some other areas. And then we also have Kern, who formed a very strong partnership with the SELPA System Improvement Lead. And they are currently using least restrictive environment data that's being collected. And so we hope to have a process like that we can share across the state to say, here are other data sources that LEAs can use. And we think that by narrowing the number of topics and really concentrating on a few critical areas, that's really going to help our geographic leads to come to the table and to contribute the knowledge and the skills that they've developed over the last 2 years, and create some resources across the board for our LEAs. So thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Board Member Monroe. Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate that at the end. And I think at our state board meeting, Heather Calamise, the new director of the Special Education Division, had highlighted an emphasis on LRE as something of great interest for the state to continue the conversation so that you could learn from what's happening in the field. Other board member comments, Board Member Sobrante.
Yeah, thank you. And it's encouraging to see how this is getting more and more fleshed out and built out. And I know it's hard work to get, you just look at that chart and you see all these different content leads and the geo leads, and the county offices. So a lot of progress for sure is being made. I do have a couple questions though, just trying to understand just still where teachers engage in the process or how this connects. Because I see a lot of great work and a lot of great collaboration. I think where some of my colleagues are still trying to question, like, where do teachers access what's happening within the system of support? Are they involved in any way? Where are they accessing it? I mean, I know indirectly through the county offices, but just trying to understand, where the end user at the end of this, connects to the system.
Great. That's a great question, Member Sobrante. We actually just sent out an update this morning that I'll make sure gets forwarded to all of our board members that updates some of the activities within the system of support. And some of those are targeted specifically to teachers who are in the classroom. And so we have many of our leads, for example, many of our SELPA leads, Marin County Office of Ed. I think that we have Superintendent Mars on the call with us today, that the Marin County SELPA leads a lot of initiatives that provide direct assistance to teachers who are supporting students with autism. We also have workshops through the English Learner Roadmap Educator Workforce Investment Grant that have workshops directly targeted to teachers and teacher leaders at school sites that they can engage in with the system of support. And so many of our initiatives are directed, do have activities directed specifically to teachers, and I'll make sure that you get those that information and that contact to ensure that we have different avenues of communication. I think that's been one of our challenge, Member Sobrante, Savante, is communicating the variety of activities that are happening across the system of support. Some of them, for example, you have been hearing a little bit about 21 CSLA, the California School Leadership Academy, that is being led through the 21 CSLA Center at UC Berkeley, and then 7 regional academies across the state. Those are directed to leaders, but it includes teacher leaders as well as principals and other administrators within the district. But those have just gotten up and running in the last several months and have really just launched their activities since January. So the 21 CSLA does have a website that announces all of those dates and information. So we'll make sure that you get that as well. But I think those are the main connection points to the system of support, and making sure that our educators are getting what they need, sometimes in very focused areas. Like I said, students with autism. And in other cases, it's a little bit more broad for the needs that they have.
No, and I think that's encouraging. I would just say that engagement with AXA and then engagement with CTA, and I bring up AXA because site principals, a lot of this work's going to happen at the site level, and making sure, the high level is important. That needs to happen. I don't want to diminish that, but at the end of the day, it's what happens at the individual sites, and making sure that principals and teacher leaders, are really connected and getting these resources in a meaningful way. So connecting with the CTA leadership, they have service center councils throughout the state. Right. AXA has its structure, and just always thinking about, while the system up here is doing important work, the end user at the individual sites and the individual classrooms critically important. So thank you for that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Savante. Any other comments? Tom?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback a little bit on Board Member Gregson's comments too. Is it's interesting too. I think this has been a journey, and I appreciate Board Member Monroe's comments as well. It was interesting too, because I know I came on exactly the same time the GeoLead piece. A lot of this was all starting to get developed, and we heard some of the criticism and we heard some of the concerns around that. But the interesting part is we actually had to do it, though. We still needed to do what was in statute. We had to do what was designed. And now we've been able to come back, right, after a couple of years, right, as a continuous improvement, right, model for that, and really kind of come back together. And the shift that we're making is actually it's a grassroots shift, right? It's actually working with the GeoLeads. We've had a group of us that, from the state board, from CCEE, from the department, and with county superintendents, right, and the GeoLeads together, of actually saying, okay, what have we learned, right? We have the evaluation that we did. What did we learn, and where do we need to shift, right, in order to be able to address the larger needs of the state? I think the piece for me, I know I brought this up before, when the pandemic hit, right, I think all of us and everywhere, right, we all do what we normally do in a crisis, right? We get our own teams together and we go. And what we generally don't do is look to other teams during those times, because we got a crisis in front of us. And at some point you come up for air, right? Which I think we're still coming up for air. At some point, and then you look, okay, how could we maybe work a little bit better around some of those pieces? And what I think happened during that crisis is, right, I don't believe we relied on the system. The system of support didn't have the capacity at that time to work collectively together to really address some of the needs, right? Mm-hmm. We were just too new, right? We were still I think, as Karen said, right, we were still storming, trying to form kind of where we're at. And, we had some good things happen during that time too, but they were, if you think about a system, I think the parts maybe did some good work. The system itself, maybe not so much, right? And so now we've had a little opportunity, I think, and really appreciate where we're at to kind of now come back together again and say, okay, where can we shift to really move forward? And really we're at a place that we can do that. But I think the piece for us is, because I know we all heard that criticism, and I would say this to our partners all the time, is I'm like, look, we can change it, right? We have the capacity as a group to change this. Yes, it's in statute or whatever, but we can come together. We can do this differently, right? But we have to agree. We have to all come together. Everybody's got to engage in that to really be able to make that shift. There's always been that interest in doing it, right? And now I just appreciate that we've actually taken that opportunity. And, we should continue to shift. Whatever we're doing now, I think we'll get stronger and better at it. But, the system should shift, right, and to be able to address the needs as we move forward. So anyway, I appreciate Ronnie's work around that and Stephanie's team and the state board and county. So everybody's been really willing to kind of stay the course, right, and go, okay, let's shift again, right now, and I think we're at a really, really good place. So
Great.
Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Ronnie. And I'll just add to the comments that wherever you were in 2014-15, Tim, board member Sabrante and I were sitting in our first CCEE meeting, hearing about the system of support that was supposed to be created. And so I have a really sincere appreciation for, I'm sure you do, board member Sabrante, how those conversations have gotten to where we are right now is just leaps and bounds. Couldn't have imagined what it would look like at that point in time. I think you have done just an excellent job, CC, of cultivating conversations in such a way that it paints a picture of what it could look like. And I will say, board member Sabrante, you have been on the mantra of getting down to the user level since 2014 around this conversation. So I appreciate that very much, that you continue to bring that up. I think it's really important. So thank you for that. I'll turn it over to any public comment or any further discussion from the board at this point. Okay, seeing none. Any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay. Any further discussion from the board and or closing comments, Tom? Okay. Seeing none, let's keep rolling then. That closes item 5. Thank you for that, Ronnie. It was incredibly informative, and again, can't underscore enough how much we appreciate how far we've come. Item 6, leading forward 2021, mitigating learning loss and rebuilding stronger school communities. A single attachment for this information discussion item, and we'll turn it over to Suji Shin.
Good morning, board. And my aim will be that we will still be in this morning when I finalize this, finish this presentation. So we'll kind of whip through this today. But I think I gave a little bit of a prelude to the work of our Leading Forward 2021 work with our overview of our professional learning initiatives to date. And I really want to sort of start there because it truly is the culmination of all of the work that we've been doing over the course of 5.5 years, 6 years at CCEE has been engaged in this work and really thinking about how do we develop robust tools and resources for schools, district teams? How do we engage in our stakeholders to really identify the highest priority needs and highest leverage starting and engagement points? I think as Member Sponti has really pushed us over the years, how do we really focus on user impact and output? How do we engage, especially with our educators at that school and classroom level, to really think about outcomes for students? And that is really the space in which we're excited to launch our Leading Forward initiative. It's a result of all the work that we've done over the past several years, and especially over, in the spring, summer, and fall of last year, in thinking about what are the supports that our schools, district leadership teams need in order to really get to this business of thinking about teaching and learning in a different world that we all now find ourselves in. And so I said, the framing for this has been for us, I think kind of the way I've been describing it to some degree has been, what would a conference look like focused on teaching and learning in a different way in 2021, based on our best practices and our lessons learned in 2020? What would that conference look like if we divorced it from the limitations of time and space? So not to get too Twilight Zone-y, but this idea that we're not focused on being together in a single place. It's virtual, that we're not locked to a specific time period, that we would open it up in an ongoing way and continue to build, continue to expand, continue to evolve as the needs of our schools and districts also evolved. As we've said, the 5 areas of focus that we are launching this with, recognizing that this may change over time as we engage in this work more deeply, are centered around these 5 key questions. around thriving socio-emotionally. What does it now really look like to ensure that our students are thriving? What are the conditions we need to set? What are the structures we need in place? What are the tools and supports that students need to truly be given the opportunity and also actually thrive socio-emotionally as well as academically, no matter where they are or who they are. Around formative assessment, given all the limitations that we have right now in assessing students, in really engaging with students, how do we measure student needs at the individual level, as well as progress, to truly ensure that we're meeting and supporting the needs of that whole child, focusing on student outcomes every step of the way for every student in every classroom across our state. Thinking about instruction, we talk about responsive teaching and learning and how we've had to adapt that into the virtual and hybrid learning space. What will that look like in 2021? What are our best practices? How do we ensure that we are providing the right learning opportunities for each and every student, again, regardless of who they are or where they are? And then for that systems leadership piece, what does it take to be a systems-driven leader during this time? And we define leadership not positionally, but everybody, as a role in being a leader, whether at the classroom level, at the school, the district, county office, the state level. How do we really think about this holistically, examining kind of staffing, programs, funding, to really focus on that responsiveness of teaching and learning during this time? And again, all of these center to that focal, kind of central lens of how do we ensure that we're continuing to maintain a focus on equity for our students, our schools, and communities during this ongoing crisis. How do we continue this through the lens through which we examine data, that we identify curriculum and learning supports, that we examine outcomes, that we provide professional learning. And so this has been the platform on which we're really trying to engage in this Leading Forward 2021 work. And we've been excited to really delve in deeper into this through some key sort of programmatic areas. So for each of our, across all of our strands, we are working to really target audiences and engage folks in different ways. We have partnered with some of the leading voices in educational equity and instructional practice across our state, across the country, across internationally, to really provide some of the kind of motivational guidance and inspiration around the work that we're doing and helping us tackle some of our key questions. We were excited to launch our keynote speaker series with Dr. Peter Senge, who talked to us about compassionate systems and the role that that plays in really rethinking teaching and learning during this time. And he'll be coming back again over the course of the next year to really dig in deeper into thinking about the critical point at which our classrooms and schools are, and how we continue to build and learn on this sort of systems building that takes into account every single child, every single stakeholder within that system. We're excited to continue to be launching that over the next coming weeks. We will have been posting speaker sessions up from Dr. Pedro Noguera, focusing on really examining this question of equity and how we tackle that on as we think about reopening schools in the summer and fall and on from in 2021. And then also from Dr. Michael Fullen in March, who will be kind of revisiting his key drivers of reform that have launched some of the conversation and work around California's local control funding formula initiatives. We're also really excited to be launching a new initiative in partnership with our colleagues over at the UC San Diego Extension Program, along with kind of key development partners. So for example, with our TNTP partners and as well as others, really thinking about how we develop more robust courses that can be made available to anyone that teams can access, that individuals can access, that are robust, that build learning upon each other, that provide opportunities to engage, to learn, to take back and implement at their school, district, site levels, and come back with opportunities to reflect, share, and refine processes as they think about topics such as teaching online essentials, developing, implementing, and learning acceleration plan, thinking about the considerations for developing systems and supports for vulnerable student groups in the distance and blended learning space, engaging parents and families as key stakeholders and empowering them to support distance and hybrid learning, focus on student outcomes, and then leading for equity in rural settings, which is a course that we're going to be launching in a few weeks with our colleagues over at Humboldt County Office of Ed. So we're starting this, we're just launching this work now, identifying some key areas where we've done some development work to provide courses, and we're anticipating that we will be able to develop more robust offerings as this goes on. And again, these courses will be available through UC San Diego Extension. They are free and available to all, and there are options for individuals to earn continuing education units through that process as well. And then sort of on the resource level, we are also continuing to apply our quality, relevance, usability rubric to identify, expand, and develop resources targeting kind of very specific topic areas that we have highlighted, especially on those 5 key strands, focusing on that key stakeholder, ensuring that there is specificity and relevance to whether it is a classroom teacher, a paraeducator, a board member, a district leader around, again, these key topic areas. And these are resources that are meant to be a little bit more standalone, but where we have done a little bit more than we've done in the past, right? Instead of just putting resources out there that we've identified as a best practice as being robust, but also providing some of the scaffolded support to support the implementation, the use, and the refinement of that at that local context. So whether that be through video, kind of media support and guidance, facilitation guides, some additional notes on how to use a particular tool, strategy, session in the field has been sort of our next step in how we really move that forward. So as you can see here, we've begun the process of building this out. We're really focusing on those that are high leverage, that are robust, that really do focus on outcomes and do really meet our metrics of, again, being high quality based on best practice, research, and lessons learned, being really focused and specific in their relevance to a particular user, and then again, that usability in terms of minimizing any burden on the user to actually take it and use that in their context. So with that, we're also, coming up, we are anticipating the building out of live events as well. The initial building out of this has been to really think about this asynchronously. How do we get, keynote sessions where you don't have to sit in a lunchroom and listen to the keynote, but you have it available to you so you can access it, come back to it, read the transcript on your off time. How do we build courses that you can work through as an individual, in partners, or at, hopefully as an instructional leadership team in your school or site, to really focus on building and learning together and applying that at your site as a team. And then the resources, having that at your fingertips to be able to come back to, and sortable by kind of topic area, by audience, by user context, to really think about how do you identify solutions or tools and tips to help you with the challenges that you are facing in your classroom, in your school, or in your district. So with that, I think I wanted to maybe take a quick
What we've learned is we can do more, and that we've actually have new tools and resources that we never had before.
The life of the child is really the school. People are innovating all across the state.
What we found in the research is there are three really important things to build the foundation for self-directed learning.
The real learning is not in sitting and listening, it's in doing.
They are literally creating new ways of understanding things.
We also have career development and goals towards a possible future self.
A crisis plan is only as good as the people you can connect to.
We don't need to look at technology for itself. We need to look at technology for what it allows for students to do.
It boils down to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're hungry, you're not worried about math.
There is tremendous power in being able to step back and analyze through multiple lenses. How is this going to either support greater equity or exacerbate issues of inequity in my school?
When we think about the skill sets that we want to give our students, what we really try to do is begin with the end in mind.
Welcome to Leading Forward.
Great. So as you can see, we're trying to really focus on creating tools and media resources to engage folks, to get them in, and then provide something more robust once they're in this platform to really engage with resources, tools to dig in deeper, to take that back to their teams as well, as we really focus on supporting this, the next several months and the ongoing year as we continue forward in 2021, really thinking about what are the high leverage tools and resources to really support the acceleration of learning for all students, across the state and across the country. So as I said, this is a beginning initial platform that we have built out. We're anticipating that this will be an evolving platform that we will continue to bring back and continue to share with all of you over the course of 2021. We are excited, I think, for the first time truly to get in deeper and think about what are some of those resources and supports that might be most helpful and beneficial to our frontline teachers and educators in virtual and in-person classrooms across the state. And so we've also been excited. We're just beginning, some initial first collaborations with, NEA, AFT, and with our colleagues over at the CTA to really focus on, what would be most helpful? How do we really engage teachers and provide resources and tools that are helpful to them in this time and space? So I will pause here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Suji. I've been so anticipating you diving in and kind of weaving your way through that for us. God, there's so many great resources there. I'll open it up to our board members for comments, questions, discussion. Board Member Gregson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Suji, for walking us through that. Can you dive in a little bit deeper around the courses and what the courses look like as if you're a participant? What would you be engaging in? What does it look like?
Yeah, we've been using and applying best learning pedagogy in the development of our courses, really trying to think about how do we create opportunities for individuals in that asynchronous space, at least for now. Think about engaging with content and then breaking that up into sessions or modules. So there are kind of multimedia modules where there is more of that kind of learning, and then guiding questions, reflecting opportunities for folks to go back during between sessions to apply that learning in their classroom, in their district, in their administrative teams. Again, and then coming back as individuals or in teams to really reflect on what that implementation looked like, how to refine practice. There are facilitation guides, notes, additional supports for folks to, as best they can, engage with that work in, again, that asynchronous space. That's all to say, this is also a learning process for us. We started off with those 5 courses as a place where we had enough kind of robust material to really create a course made up of anywhere from 5 to 8 individual sessions, again, with some of those reflection opportunities, facilitation guides, assessments, and activities, just as you would in a normal course, broken up over a period of where we're anticipating several weeks to several months for completion. And then taking that, building in opportunities to collect feedback so that we can continue to refine that process and make that the course development more robust ourselves.
Thank you. Just a few more added ones. Who are the instructors that will be providing the content for the courses, and how do the students for the courses get feedback around their work?
We're working through that ourselves through the learning platform that San Diego, UC San Diego Extension has provided. So again, it's not, at this point, we're not able to do any of that kind of live interaction, and we're trying to work out the kinks of how do we provide opportunities for students to receive feedback on, reflection notes, again, on some of the exchanges that they're having as a team. I think over time, we're also in the process of thinking about how we build in some of our best practices that we had in the spring of thinking about office hours, right? Some of the coaching and mentoring opportunities embedded throughout that course development and offering.
Great, thank you. I think the feedback piece is going to be really important for people to have that interaction and be able to understand and process their own thinking. So I'm glad to hear that you're starting to work on what that could look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Gregson. That was a great question. Board Member Sabrante. And then Board Member Monroe.
Thank you. I absolutely love this. I think there's, so many different directions that this can really build out over, but it's a great initial start. I would say, first, I love the university partnership, the fact that there's a credit earning opportunity, particularly for teachers, I think could be an incentive, but the fact that you also have a non-credit path. I also think I would really heavily advertise this as we get closer to summer. I mean, I know right now you're already advertising it and all the different, I've gotten the emails and seen what's gone out, but for so many educators, who are just trying to get through the day, get through the week, sometimes it's just, especially in the distance learning environment and so many moving parts, even though it's relevant for now, for some, it may be a little bit more challenging to take a course at this time, but I think as you get into May and June and things ostensibly settle out a little bit, I think you might be able to make another push and perhaps get some more people. But I like the fact that if you're a superintendent, you benefit from the courses. If you're a first grade teacher, you benefit from some of the courses. It doesn't matter what your role is. There's curriculum and content and areas that everybody benefits from. And you've got some great partners and there's just some great resources there. So I'm really, really pleased. And I feel like we've only hit the tip of the iceberg. I know we're going to be able to do a lot greater things with this, but a very exciting initial launch. And I look forward to the coming months and years as this builds out. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Board Member Spround. Board Member Monroe.
Board Member Lyon, your hand was up first. I'll let you go. And then
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you, Karen. I just want to say I was super excited to hear Suji talk about this topic, and I was looking forward to it on the agenda, and it did not disappoint. And I just want to say that, as a former one school district superintendent principal, this is the kind of work that we can do as an agency that benefits rural places that don't have as available access to coursework, to support, to really, in those urban areas, you have a lot of access to different ways to bring things in. If you're a larger district, you do the same. But for our smaller school districts, keeps them in the cutting edge with the best professionals, experts, and especially as Board Member Gregson said, if we can get to the point where it's interactive, they're getting feedback, that's driving their own improvement. What an amazing venture. So congrats on this work, and I look forward to how it evolves in the future. It's going to benefit a lot of people in the field.
So may I'm
sure
glad Board Member Lyon went first, because that was a great foundation for what I wanted to share, which is I would encourage, as you do this, to kind of engage in an a shared metacognitive process, because a lot of places are actually trying to develop courses for their teachers and figure out, first of all, in this distance learning environment, but going forward, how do we actually have a robust set of on-demand trainings? So, you know, this also gets to board member Sabrani's point, like teachers actually being able to share their best practices and having it be available, you know, within a district for other teachers to watch. It's not a skill that districts have had, and not one that they would have put at the top of the priority list just because of all the other urgencies. But now that we're in a distance learning mode, I think we at CCEE are very well positioned to teach people how that can be done, what platforms. I know, you know, I believe like us, San Diego has Canvas, and they're just platforms that I think very easily we could actually do a professional development on how to do professional development. So just encouraging the knowledge that you're gaining along the way about how to set this up actually gets shared as well.
Thank you, Board Member Monroe. Tom?
Yeah, I wanted to give some concrete examples too. And again, I can speak more directly. We have actually these 5 areas. We have teams. So different members of the team are tackling various areas. And so this area in particular where I'm focused on is around the assessment piece too. And some of the examples I think that were just referenced is what we've learned is there's actually quite a bit of resources. It almost goes back to Board Member Sabrante's point earlier. I don't think I think as a country, right, and even as a state, we're pretty resource rich, right? But actually giving access to those and getting those in the hands of folks being able to do it in a place where it works for them has not been easy, right? And so even, for example, even in the trainings and things we've done, well, if you're available during that time, right, you can get it. But if you're not, right, you don't necessarily have that. And so some of the partnerships, for example, that Michelle and I have been working on when we, you know, in particular, we've been thinking about this from a couple of two different lenses, if you will. What works for teachers, right? And what works for administrators who have some of this responsibility around the design, right, of what needs to happen, right, as we think about how we address the needs of kids. And what we've learned, right, is teachers like to hear from teachers, right, in particular, right, because that's where some of that expertise is. And so we're focused on that. So for example, and what we learned is we reached out, for example, with NEA has already developed what they call micro-credentials. They've already put courses together, right, specific to things that they've learned around assessment, social emotional learning, and academic, right? It already exists. So how can we partner with them? And so we've already looked at that partnership and then thinking about how we fit those within some of what it is that we're already working on. Could we use those to maybe do something with UC San Diego to still get those pieces, but they're here directly from teachers. When we looked at AFT, for example, AFT has what they call Share My Lesson. So they have lessons that have already been developed. And they're like, and we've got teachers who would love to present those lessons, right? Specifically focused, right, on addressing the social emotional learning needs of students and the academic piece. So we're partnering with them. So I think getting at Board Member Gregson's question too, we're trying to take something they already had and then package it a little bit differently to kind of fit, right, in some of the ways that we feel it could work. For the Center for Assessment, for example, we've reached out to them and they put a proposal together for us that's focused on administrators. It's focused specifically around design and really asking administrators, taking them through a series, right, that would really have them think about, you know, how could they focus, for example, what type of programs or things could they put together around tutoring, right? What are some things that they could do around extended learning, right? How are things maybe you look at, for example, credit recovery, right, in a way that we've done not differently than what we've done necessarily in the past, right? But giving them actually the space and time to actually give them the time, walk them through some of the best practices, what the research says around that with examples of folks who've done it. And then they also have this idea of also going back to the PLN. And for those who want to be part of a professional learning network separate from that, right, who could raise their hand. And so instead of maybe doing what we've tried to do at all of our trainings is we always try to have what we call office hours. So people who can come back in and go, you know, I heard you say that. Could you tell me how to do that? They have this idea of actually doing it through like a PLN, which obviously, you know, we have a lot of experience with. So, and it's again, those who wanted to do that. I went through the training. I'm interested in working with some folks, right, who would be able to, who might be high school folks, right, who know my world in the high school world, specifically if I'm talking about maybe how to build something around credit recovery, for example. So those are just some examples, and that's just in some of the areas that Michelle and I are working, right? Each of our team have various examples of that as well. But that's somewhat of the theory of action that we're playing around with.
Great. Thank you, Tom, for the clarification and the follow-up. And I appreciate the thoughtful comments and questions from the board. I want to underscore, Board Member Lyon, your comment about the support to small rural school districts in particular. I think this is these are the types of resources that help them, and really when they feeling so isolated around how to get those supports and expand and build the capacity of the practitioners within the district. And Board Member Gregson, I appreciate those questions, and I think, Suji, it'd be worth coming back to revisit those questions and progress of how it's going down the road to the extent that we can. That being said, any final comments?
Yeah, I would be remiss if I just didn't take this opportunity to say thank you to Suji. I have to tell you, I don't know, I was pushing on this pretty hard back in December, and then actually said to Suji, you've got to help us do it, and you have to get that going in January. She's like, right? And so all of what you've seen, she's just went after it hard. I'm excited to have you. At some point, you'll get to meet James McKenna, right, who's new to our team in particular. James is really digging in, and it's exciting for us too as a team, right, where we are working. Suji's driving us hard, right? We're meeting seems like every day, but at least 3 times a day. We got all the time we're like, oh shoot, there it is, another hour, we better get our stuff ready. So she's driving us hard, but she's doing an incredible job. And so I just appreciate her for all of her leadership.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Suji, again, on behalf of the board, all your hard work. That takes us to general public comment or public comment regarding item 6. Leanne, do we have any public comment regarding item 6?
No public comments have been received.
Okay. Anyone watching the board meeting?
Yes, we do have participants. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There being none, any final discussion or comments from board? Okay, seeing none. Tom, any closing comments on this item? We're good. All right, that closes item 5. And board members, with your permission, I'd like to see where we get by 12:30, if that's okay, without a break. Okay, we have 2. I'll assume, I'm not going to say it, but I think that these 2 items will move us quite along. So item 7, modified salary schedule for CCEE professional expert employees. This is a discussion and action item presented by Amy Carter from the Marin County Office of Education. And Amy, this being your first CCEE board meeting, welcome. We appreciate having you.
Thank you, Chair Nava. It's an honor to be here. And Board Member Gregson, as a baseball fan, you can just think of me as the cleanup batter. My goal is to get you all out of here as quickly as possible. So that's the aim today. Tom invited me to take a second to just kind of introduce myself and tell you a little bit about my background. I started out as a English teacher in the San Joaquin Valley, spent a lot of years teaching there, and then I shifted to school leadership. I've spent 6 years leading Title I elementary schools, and another 6 leading high schools, including Rancho Cotati High School in Sonoma. My last couple of years have been in the Novato Unified School District, where I've had the opportunity to work with Chair Navo on a great MTSS project. Academically, my scholarship, I have a master's in rhetoric and communication, and a second in educational leadership. And I was just a few months behind Board Member Lyon in the USC program and getting my doctorate in organizational change leadership. So right on. So that's kind of my background, and I'm really finding this opportunity acting as the liaison between 2 just really incredibly talented organizations and serving 2 agencies that I know are really committed to delivering on California's promise of that quality, equitable education for all students. So So I'll get right to it. Item 7, today I bring forward for ratification a modified salary schedule for the CCE professional expert employees. As a brief background, the CCE board historically serves to ratify salary schedules for CCE employees. The modification that's before you today is in response to the fact that the director role has evolved since the CCE was established in 2015. And this modification really reflects that expansion of duties and will aid the CCEE in their recruitment of high-level candidates, making this position title more competitive with other higher level positions which exist in other agencies and organizations. So to ultimately improve the recruitment efforts and retention, the staff is recommending this change of title from director to senior advisor. And then with that, I'd like to open it up to the board for any questions.
Board comments, questions? Seeing none. Amy, I think it's pretty straightforward. Again, welcome aboard. It's a pleasure having you. With that, with no discussion or comments or questions, I'll move to public comment on item 7. Leanne, any public comment?
No public comments have been received for this one either.
Okay. Back to the board for any last discussion or comments related to this item.
Chair Nava, I'll move the item as presented.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to motion. Seeing no more discussion, we have a motion from Board Member Sabranti. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Board Member Monroe, and we'll go through the roll call. Board Member Lyon.
Aye.
Board Member Gregson.
Aye.
Board Member Sabranti.
Aye.
And Board Member Monroe.
Aye.
And I also am aye. That'll close item 6. Tom, do you have any final comments on this item? Or item 7, rather? Okay, seeing none, we'll close it officially. Item 7 and moving to item 8, review of CCE 2019-20 financial audit. This is information discussion only. And again, Amy, welcome back to the podium.
Thank you. Really happy to report that this is a clean audit. It's been attached for your review. And I really want to commend the work of Senior Fiscal Director Romanier Johnson and her team, Arjun Singh and Janet Carraza. It's really their fine work that's yielded the quality result of this clean audit report. And this is an informational item only, and I'd like to open up to the board for any questions.
No comments, questions? Okay. Well, it's always nice to have a clean audit, as I'm sure the board appreciates that very much, and want to commend the efforts and those of all that are working on keeping the financials in order. There's a lot of labor behind getting a clean financial audit, as most of us know. So with that, we'll close the discussion and any public comment related to item 8.
No public comments as well.
Okay. Any last discussion opportunities or final discussion opportunities from the board? Okay, Tom?
No comments.
Okay, no comment. Then that will close item 8. Thank you, Amy, for the hard work, and welcome aboard. It's a pleasure having you. That'll take us to item 9. And this is Marin County Office of Ed update on the governor's proposed budget for 21-22. This is information discussion item as well. And Amy, you're going to continue to stay on with Karina.
Clean up batter, I'm telling you. All right, what we've offered for the board today really is a memo that's based on what we know at this juncture related to the governor's proposed budget. This item does not include the released draft trailer bill, which is coming forth over the last few days. I know that you're all veterans of how this process works, and that the governor's proposed budget is really a starting point with those early ideas and priorities forecasts. Then the legislature is in the process of responding, and we'll see where the revenues go as we head into May and the May revision. In respect to CCEE, the governor's budget does include continued overall sums as the prior year to continue the work of statewide system of support. In addition, consistent with last year's budget, it includes ongoing funds to support the 21st Century California Leadership Academy, which, as you recall, is a multi-year project in conjunction with our valued partners, the CDE. In addition, the governor's proposed budget includes an increase of Proposition 1998 funding of $14.9 billion with a total budget of $85.8 billion. And this budget is really designed to address some critical issues in education and seeking to alleviate the COVID-19 pandemic outcomes on student populations and provide additional resources to educational communities in preparation for in-person learning. Just some items to highlight is the in-person instruction grants. The governor's budget includes an allocation of $2 billion from Prop 98 funds that are offering optional, for schools that are offering that optional in-person instruction. There's an expanded learning time academic intervention grant, which is really looking at those targeted strategies due to learning loss from the pandemic. There's $400 million dedicated to student mental health and $25 million of one-time funds to expand the Mental Health Student Services Act partnership grant. And special education has a $300 million ongoing Prop 98 general fund for the special education early intervention grant, and really looking at the increased availability of evidence-based services for infants and toddlers. And there's a one-time proposition in the general fund to examine certification and oversight of those non-public schools and special ed placements. There's some a dedication to community schools, to some of the school climate work, professional development, $315 million package for educator professional development with an emphasis on quality training in high needs areas. And the educator workforce grant is another $225 million to improve the state teacher pipeline. So what we've offered you is just really kind of a general outline of where that budget seems to be heading, and we're of course watching the trailer bill and reading it, and we'll be informing you as that evolves and takes shape.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts right now, I think, related to that. So I thank you for the high level overview of the budget. Any comments, questions, discussion from board? Board Member Sabrante?
Yeah, thank you for that. More of a question, and maybe staff or probably board members as well that are more in the know than I am. The 4.6 billion that's supposed to be decided by mid-March, or what? Maybe if someone could just dive into that a little bit more, what that's directed towards specifically. That's I've gotten some questions about that and just trying to get a handle on what that is. And again, probably board members can address that just as much as staff, but I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. Board Member Gregson?
I can give you a little bit around that. So it's really targeted to looking at how to expand learning opportunities, either expanding instructional minutes during the school day or expanding in the number of days during the school year, expanding summer school opportunities, intersessional opportunities. There's also specific language around looking at intervention programs, diagnostic assessments, progress monitoring, benchmark elements. So anything that is related to expanding learning opportunities for students, the $4.6 billion can be utilized for that. Professional learning to teachers and administrators, all of that is allowable expenses for the $4.6 billion. And the timeline is, it's part of the early action. And so in speaking with Department of Finance and the governor's office, looking at the realistic timeline for districts being able to plan, because if you're looking at expanding your calendar year, that requires bargaining. If you're looking at expanding your instructional minutes, that requires bargaining. So the new there's going to be some revisions to it, and I think the timeline will be a part of that.
Got it. Thank you.
I think the other key piece there too is, as Board Member Gregson shared too, is, and it's also focused on, students in poverty, our English learners, or especially those particular student groups that are often identified through the concentration supplemental grants.
Fantastic. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Board Member Gregson, for filling in the blanks there for us. I was curious as well. Okay, there being none, we'll move to general or public comment on item 9. Leanne, any public comment?
No public comments.
Okay, there being none. I did get one text that Sarah there is somebody watching our board, our meeting. So we know that they're out there. No public comment. Turn it over to the board for any final comments on this item. Okay, there being none, we will close item 9. And guess what? We are at the final item here. Heading into the home stretch. This is item 10. The subject of general public comment. We invite the public is invited on any matter not included on the printed agenda, depending on the number of individuals wishing to address the CCEE. The presiding officer may establish specific time limits on presentations. This is an information only. And Leanne, do we have any public comments, either written or live?
No general comments have been submitted.
Okay, there being no general public comment, I think, Tom, we wanted to, before we close the board meeting, have some comments here.
We with mixed emotions, want to say thank you, and I'm not going to say goodbye. Somebody told me that a long time ago. See you later, maybe. Right? That would be maybe a little bit appropriate to board member Sandra Lyons too. So she's. In particular, I'm quite attached to Sandy in particular. We came on at the same time. The first time I met her was in my interview for the position. And I was fortunate to be offered a position, and her and Sue and I were able to have some lunch together too. And she's just been a real thought partner, somebody I've actually learned quite a bit from. During this pandemic, we've reached out many times and both just kind of problem solving together, her giving me feedback as to where the CCE could really support the district in ways that we can make sure we didn't screw things up for them as well. Just somebody that, I just feel like I've really, we'll miss her greatly. I've already hit her up and said, Sandy, when your 6 months are over and you want to come and do some work with us, we need more professional experts, people from the field. What Sandy's really unique too. I always appreciate that. I think both of us started in those small districts, as that background, and then to be able to move along and get to the district the size of, Palm Springs is pretty amazing. Seeing her leadership too and her talents too. So we do have something for you particularly, but I want to be able to make sure I give our staff an opportunity a few of them wanted to say thank you to you as well, and wish you well. And then I know, I'm sure some of the board members will want to share as well. So. I might ask Carla or Suji if they would have a few things they want to say.
Yeah, good. Sorry, Carla, do you want to go first? Let's jump in. Sorry, Sandy. I was just going to say, I just want to take a really quick moment and thank you as well for your service on our board. I think I reflect back on your time with us, and you've always led with such a passion for the schools and staff and the students that you and we serve together. You've always been so consistent in helping us focus on what our work means for students and schools. You haven't let us get away with anything, right? Whether it's like the development of a professional learning resource, an analysis of data, the implementation of our district learning, review process, but kind of just like sitting at that high level. And instead, you're always kind of pushing us to articulate how this improves access, opportunities, and outcomes for our LEA communities and the students they serve. And you've always done this with such kindness. I feel like, as we're hearing about the serve, I feel like you really embody what it means to be that critical friend that we always talk about in our technical assistance work. That, when we go in to engage with our LEA teams, they know that we're going to be pushing them towards accelerating student outcomes and examining equity and process and outcomes for students, but always through that lens of sitting on, the same side of the table, and that our success is their success. And I think, we've definitely felt that friendly push from you always. So I know that I speak on behalf of everyone who's had the opportunity to work with you, that we know that our success has been your success, and truly we're just so grateful for it. I think the only thing I regret is not having the opportunity to do some work in Palm Springs, like particularly in the winter months, but we'll maybe park that in for some of our consulting work. So thank you.
As they said, Suji. So building from what Suji said, I just wanted to thank you for being a leader in California, for serving in many leadership roles throughout the state. And I in particular really want to also say to you that I am grateful for the type of standard of practice that you expect of yourself, you expect of those that work with you, work for you, and that you've expected of us as a CCEE team. And I think as someone who's always trying to do the best that they can to be reflective and be thoughtful and ensure that we're making the impact on the students we serve, I think you've been a great model and a great guide for us. And like I said, as Suji has said, push us to a stronger standard of practice. And so I thank you for that. I also want to thank you for being an inspiration as a woman leader also in the state of California. You've broken many barriers, and I think it's something that I look forward to being able to see what you will do next. I hardly find anyone with your kind of skill sets and your background doing retirement very well. So I think it's one of those things that your heart and your just spirit won't let you continue to just, enjoy the things that retirement can bring you. You have to continue to do other things. And so we welcome that and here at CCEE, but we also know that you can share so much more with others. And so as you choose to use your time, I would encourage you to try to find something that you like to do. I know people talk about different talents and skills that we don't know people have. I'd wonder what yours is. Maybe you can teach Suji and I how to practice that better. And so I hope that you continue to keep in touch and let us know how you're doing things. But I don't doubt you will continue to be in the space with us. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Suji. Thank you, Carla. Board members, anyone feel the need to make comment here?
Sure. I'll just keep mine very brief because I didn't get to work with Sandra as much as I would have wanted to. But I will say this, and this mirrors some of what Suji talked about. You keep it real. You keep it very real for the work and for the students. And I'm going to assume for your staff as well. So thank you for all you have done in Palm Springs for the students that you serve there and for the teachers and administrators that you serve there as well. And for keeping it real, because that's what we need. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Gregson. Board Member Monroe.
Thanks. So Sandy, I too did not get to work with you nearly long enough. This is why I was moving to change the bylaws to accommodate retired professionals. But I won't do that to you. But I felt like when I joined the board, the new kid in the class who sits next to the kid who really seems to know what she's doing and watched you as I came on this board. And though I did not know a lot of the details that people are speaking right now, you actually embody that. You show up in a way that is consummately professional and in a way that others just naturally would want to emulate. So I'm glad I had just this brief time to be in your company on this board, and I wish you the very best. And I'm trying not to be envious as we all continue in a pandemic to lead in education. But thank you for the example you set.
Thank you, Board Member Monroe. Board Member Sabrante.
Yeah, I echo all the comments that have been said, and it's just been a pleasure working with you. You're such a great collaborator, a great thoughtful leader. As you said, we put you right into the toughest decision on day one, and every day since then. And I think really helping to set the strategic direction of this organization and really define, some of those 4 key goals that we spent time on this morning. But I mean, you were part of defining that. CCU doing a lot of different things, and you really helped focus our work in a very meaningful way, and particularly during the pandemic. I'd say this last year is really where we've seen the organization play a key role, and a lot of that's due to your leadership. So thank you for your commitment to this organization, and more importantly, thank you for your commitment for years as an educator with such a distinguished career. And as others said, maybe you'll take a little break, maybe you'll find a few other things to do, but we know that you'll be back at it at some point in some capacity. But it's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, Board Member Sabrante. And Board Member Lyon, I'm just going to, in fact, I'm going to let you're going to close the meeting today. I think you do the final sign off for our meeting today, and you have the last word. But you've served diligently for over 30 years the students of California. And this is going to be the next couple of months, I'm sure, are going to be fraught with lots of emotions and goodbyes. And I just want you to know, as we didn't have, like as board member Monroe said, a great opportunity to be in person, but I've appreciated every opportunity I've had to have a conversation with you. And I echo board member Gregson's description of you. It's nice to be grounded to reality ever so often, and you do that very well for all of us. So thank you, and I'll let you close the meeting.
Thank you, Board President Navo. Well, Board Chair Navo. I will just say I'm a little flustered right now because of all the kind words, and I appreciate it so much. And being on the CCEE came out of the blue for me, and it has been humbling and such an honor to work with some of the most outstanding professionals I have ever had the pleasure to be in the same room or in a Zoom room with. And so I'm really touched by Carla and Suji's words, and working with Tom has just been amazing, and each and every one of these board members. I've just appreciated your intellect and your wisdom and your perspectives, and I've learned so much in the last 3 years. So it has just been such a personal and a professional thrill to be able to be a part of this. I will take some partial credit for Tom being in the seat, because that was indeed I will never forget that first meeting, and oh my gosh, this is so important. And we did a great job. Tom has done a phenomenal job, I think, of taking the conception of a system of support, which I passionately believe in, the collaboration of agencies moving away from compliance and to support, to help teachers and administrators and parents do the hard work of making sure our kids can be anything and everything they want to be. And I think Tom has done such an expert job of really making sure that staff have what they need. And also, as you know, Carla talked about the pushing. I don't think I've done anything, but I've been really happy to be present in the moment when you all are doing all the work. But I do think that the energy and the synergy that you all have at the agency has made a big difference. And I'm just really happy to see, and we talked about it today, and when Ronnie did her presentation, I refrained from saying anything, but the idea that we really have CCEE, CDE, SBE, CCESA, all of these groups really working together to ensure statewide, whether you're big or little or medium, rural, suburban, urban, you have support at a statewide level. And I've had the great pleasure, as you have all heard, of working in small rural to suburban affluent to rural suburban high low income population, and diverse student needs. And the work is amazing, and it's so important, and it never loses its importance. And so what I really appreciate from all of you is that you keep that front and center in everything that we do, and that you understand that every context our 1,000+ districts face are different. And there is no cookie cutter approach. If there was a recipe, we'd follow it. I say that all the time to staff. We're a bunch of smart people trying to do the hard work. And I appreciate that you all are able to embrace those complexities and work toward it. And to board member Gregson's, I think it was board member Gregson, I'm going to get the guitar out again. And someday, I used to be in a rock band, and I actually had a practice pad in Oakland back in the day. So you never know. So look for me somewhere on the stage in the future. So I thank you all. Matt, your leadership also has been amazing. And I'm glad that you and Tim will continue to do the good work. And you're going to have another superintendent in the seat who's going to be as fortunate as I have to work with you.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Line, and I'll let you close us.
All right. I don't know what I say at the end.
There's no script. You just go.
All right. It was a great meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Wait. I'm so sorry. We just have a little thing.
Oh, there it is.
It's, it's made out of diamond, but it's out of glass, but we will send this to you too. But we wanted you to say, I just want to read it. It says, appreciation of Sandra Lyon. Thank you for your years of service as an educational leader and the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence board member. Your ability to inspire others to lead with excellence reflects your dedication to the students of California. Thanks, Sandy. So we'll make sure that we get this sent to you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great meeting. Thank you all. And as I say to my staff at the end of every Zoom meeting, be careful out there. And we will see you all soon. Take care.
Miss
Thank
you.
you.